Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.
I'm going all the way up. I'm going all the way up. I'm letting go in my heart of everything that holds me down. The sky and I got this relief inside, then there's no need to hide. I'm going all the way up. I'm going all the way up. I'm letting go in my heart of everything that holds me down.
We've got Dan Aston Gregory, we've got John Bush, we've got James Corbett, and Mark Passio to be our final speakers of the day. Make some noise if you're excited to hear from these gentlemen, because they're each doing some very, very powerful work, and we're just grateful that they spent time with us. Now, our next speaker, I actually have known less than a year. We just got to meet just last year whenever myself, Hakeem, and Miriam went to the UK, we went to England. We were invited to participate at the Better Way Conference. We've mentioned the Better Way Conference a couple times. You heard it from Emma, and I've mentioned it as well. Just another similar event focused on solutions happening in England. And that event, I got to meet Dan Aston Gregory and was truly inspired by listening to his talk and thought, we need him here. We need him on the Greater Reset stage. And guess what? He made the effort to come all the way from the UK to be here with us today. Please make some big noise for Dan Aston Gregory and welcome him to the stage. Oh, by the way, he came here and he celebrated so hard he almost lost his voice. So he's doing it either way. Make some noise for this gentleman.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, as Derek said, and as you'll hear, I've got some challenges vocally today. But I want to express my gratitude to everyone. And this is croaky. This is another level. This is resilience for you. But I want to say thank you to everyone who's gathered around to try and help me this week. It's been incredible. The community here, I've had everything thrown at me from Brown's gas to massage to tinctures to frankincense to honey to just now I had a shot of mezcal. It's 8 p.m. at home, so it's okay. Just to try and get my voice back in action so we could do what I come here to do today. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's supported me, and I want to say a huge thank you to all of our team here at the Greater Reset. Have just been absolutely incredible. Please give a round of applause to the Greater Reset team. Take a sip of this. One last measure, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I didn't have any slides for this talk, but I decided on the plane that I was going to put together some slides. And I've done speaker training for other people in the past, and the cardinal rule is, keep it minimal. I ignored all my own rules and created 50 slides, so I'm going to go fast. But we're all rebels in the room, right? Yes, let me hear you. So I'm from the UK, as Derek shared, and we had quite a unique experience in the UK over the last few years. I'm here to share a little bit about what we've gone through in the United Kingdom, my role in it, and what we can learn when we come to building a global counterculture for a free tomorrow. Oh, thank you. How do I advance the slides, folks? Arrow keys. So, my question to you, where were you just before the world went mad in 2020? Do you remember the moment? Do you remember where you were? This is a picture on the slides there of my wife and I in Thailand celebrating our honeymoon. We just got married in November 2019, and thank goodness we did, because if we left it any later, 2020, people in the UK, they were unable to get married, they couldn't go to their funerals, they couldn't, celebrate birthdays. It was a crazy time. But it's important to remember those times. And crazily, we got back in the UK. This photo was taken on the 10th of March. The last photo I took was of this Freedom Beach Cafe. And I didn't know how important that would be when I came back to the UK, because several days later, as soon as we landed, we were in lockdown. And the craziness of it all, everyone in the UK knew we were going into lockdown. So we went to the pub, and I know people make jokes about British food, but we went for a great Sunday roast, which is an iconic piece of, it's a meal that we have on a Sunday. And the pubs were packed. People knew it was their last meal. Yet the next day, the streets were silent. It's crazy. It's crazy how people behave during this time. But I want to share, the clicker isn't working. Can somebody help me with the slides? It's going to be very difficult if you do it from your side. Is that working now? Has that worked? Yeah. So if you're in any doubt, the madness was extremely contagious across the world. #science. In the UK, lockdowns were insane. Look at this graphic on this slide. Look her in the eyes and tell me you never bend the rules. This is outright propaganda from the National Health Service. It was a crazy, crazy time. So I'm going to be sharing some images from the UK movement over the course of this presentation, but most of the time I'll be talking to you. So we had a crazy time in the UK, but my inciting incident, the thing that really got me activated, because I've been paying attention right since the beginning, because selfishly that trip to Thailand, You know, we heard news of this thing in China. I was like, you better not screw with my honeymoon. So I started paying attention to the data, and I was like, well, this is just affecting old people, et cetera, et cetera. But it got crazier and crazier. And when I first got back from Thailand, I posted 10 questions on social media, just questions. And those questions were met with absolute animosity. I couldn't believe it. They were just questions. They weren't leading questions. I wasn't making any statements. I was just asking questions. I thought, wow, this is crazy. But the thing that really triggered me, in this picture on the left-hand side, this little tree, there's a school near where I live, or used to live, and it had all the values of that education. And I know we've got difficulties with the education system, and believe me, we do too in the UK. But I really like this tree, and I like the values that they had for their children. And I walked past that school on my daily walk, and the playground was empty. And the same day I saw photos of children in China sat in Perspex boxes, and my heart broke. Now, I wasn't a father at the time, but I knew I was planning to be one. And I thought, this isn't the world I want my children to grow up in. And I thought, I have to do something. But like many of us, you know, we have to overcome our own fears to step into action. So after much deliberation, I finally said enough's enough. I had my own business, and I was worried what people would say if I comment online. But I went and recorded this video, which 20 minutes, picked out my phone, and I just spoke from my heart about what was going on in the world. And it was crazy because it went viral. It was insane. By the end of the weekend, it had reached over 1 million people. And the comments were all saying, you're saying what I've been thinking, but no one else is saying. Thank you. But I did it because of the children, and I know many of us here do it for the children as well. And then I did have a child. This is my boy, Zach, which is crossing the threshold, and that's him holding Matthias Desmet's book, Psychology of Totalitarianism. And the look on his face, the look of intrepidation, breaks my heart. I think intuitively he knows what that book is about. And he had to listen to me in my wife's womb all the way through the lockdowns, all the way through the protests. He knows what we're all about. He's a freedom fighter, trust me. He's 2.5 years old now, and he really is a freedom fighter. But that was the end for me. There was no going back. And since that point, I've gone on to do a crazy amount of things, and they say size doesn't matter. You can see me with my first megaphone there, my first protest in Bristol. 100 people in a small city of Bristol. Went on to speak. You can see me in the Free Humanity t-shirt there in the top right-hand corner in front of 50,000 people at Trafalgar Square. I went to almost every single protest across the UK. There's a picture there of my friend Glenn Young at the European Parliament when we finally got a speech. We got the doctors and the scientists on the stage in front of the European Parliament. My dear friend Pete Lawrence in the bottom there. We hosted our first festival, a Festival of the Awakening, bringing together conversations just like this. Interviewed Matthias Desmet, reached over 1 million people with that, launched the Pandemic podcast, 1,000 episodes, just non-stop. I wouldn't stop, I wouldn't rest. And hearing Derek's story the other day is like, I've got a brother from another mother here. I don't know how either of us can. You can tell, I push things a little too hard sometimes. But I haven't stopped since that inciting moment in 2020. Launched a podcast to educate people at a time when no one was saying anything. And we put on the first UK summit in the UK, bringing together 18, 19 doctors from around the world to try and bring a credible voice to what on earth was going on in this crazy world of the pandemic. But it was no turning back, and I haven't stopped since. Even yesterday when I was walking into town, I don't know if you know, and I don't know what cause this is, by the way, but there was a huge march through Morelia, and these gentlemen said, come march with us. I was like, what am I, dial an activist? But it was really interesting talking to them about what's going on, and apologies if this is a cause that I shouldn't be standing around, but I just thought I'd share that with you. But there's a long road to freedom, and I want to share some insights from the UK. First of all, the resistance began with the crazy first dancers. In the UK, we had, the first protests, and, they weren't as organized as they could be, and people were talking about all manner of issues. We were there to talk about lockdowns, but we were talking about 5G, UFOs, and all kinds of things. Maybe all important issues, but we were trying to focus on the issue at hand. But those crazy first moments were what catalyzed the movement, and it began small, but it grew really fast. I just want to show a quick video, Hakeem, if you could show that for me.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut, and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly.
My first crazy followers in here, let me hear you. Now that line at the end is so important, because at the end it becomes so crazy, it goes from being crazy to the exciting, attractive place to be. And the people who aren't part of this are then the crazy ones, and that's what we're trying to build, I think. Am I right? So, thank you. So first we had the crazy first dancers. Then we had the dancers with the law enforcement. You can see some crazy pictures over here. We had some amazing protests shut down heavily by the law in the UK. But we teased them back. You can see the police van there with the stickers all over it. We gave it what we got. We were labeled far-right, anti-vax, conspiracy theorists who wasn't. I mean, come on, get creative. Is that the best you can do? The press downplayed our numbers. You would see in the BBC that hundreds of protesters take to the streets in London. I mean, we know that the capacity of Trafalgar Square is 50,000, and it was streaming into the streets, so hundreds of people. But thank goodness for the independent media, because you can see it firsthand. You know, the truth is, you cannot hide the truth. Our movement continued to grow. Despite that, we had our fair share of challenges. We got a group together, and we tried to evaluate what are we doing, how do we become more effective. And there was challenges with egos and collaboration and lack of communication, all sorts of things. But we persisted, and our consistency was our strength. Every single month there was a big protest scheduled in London. People knew when they were happening. I mean, we were giving clues to the police. It wasn't any secret. But we kept going. Every major city was putting on protests. The consistency was what was key for us. But when it started to feel like it was never going to end, we knew we had to do things a little bit differently. It was time for Fight Club, and don't worry, I've selected this image. It doesn't include a photo of Starbucks. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you missed Jason's talk on the first day. But what I mean by this is we had to go underground. We had to get together. We had to get smart. We were only making initial steps forward, but we needed to get organized. So we started to come together underground. We weren't creating an above-the-ground organization with a name or a label. We came together, 40, 50 different groups, to really get strategies in place to how we could move forward. And there's some actual photos here, some of the messages we would get together every month, trying to figure out how we can move forward. Now, the first event that we had, the first day, was dedicated to how do we build trust, because you had people in the room who were literally calling out each other on social media, and by the end of the first day they were hugging each other. They realized what we were facing is much bigger than any individual differences, and we realized what we have in common is far greater than what we have that separates us. So we started to get organized. We had to learn to work together. We had to figure out how to get our message out. We had to figure out how to reach people. We had to go from that crazy first dance to a message that would land. So we worked really, really smartly around how do we communicate. We had to learn fast. And we made it our mission to connect with other activists. We wanted to collaborate. We wanted to co-create. And that was a theme all the way through. We didn't want to create one single organization that was going to take over the protest movement. We wanted a decentralized, distributed action network where we would empower, amplify, and fortify all the work that people were doing so that we could all become stronger and faster together. Thank you. And then interestingly, isn't it funny when you start to work together. You start to get results. Here's some campaigns that we launched. We launched the Together Declaration, which was a declaration to stand against vaccine passports in the UK. Guess what? We had 200,000 signatories. We delivered it in person to Parliament, and we vetoed vaccine passports. They never happened in the UK. We had the NHS Jobs Over Jabs campaign, everyone carrying the blue balloons. We had hundreds of thousands of people on the street. We had NHS workers all through town. And we kicked out those vaccine mandates in the NHS. No one in the NHS had to lose their job because of a vaccine mandate. And we created a campaign to educate parents about the dangers of the injections on the children. And again, we saw the adoption rate plummet. And it was a really successful campaign. And all of this came together from collaborating, working together, shared inspiration, and putting aside our differences and our egos so that we can move forward. So what changed? We built trust. We got focused. We got creative. We worked locally, and we made it super simple. We made it really easy for people to get involved. We wanted to lower the barrier to entry. We wanted to appeal to people. We wanted to get to the movable middle. We didn't want echo chambers or silos. We wanted to create an inviting, attractive place to be. But the story isn't over. We've talked about this all week, but we've got loss of individual liberties, the rise of authoritarianism, the concentration of power, the public health policies and mandates, the erosion of medical freedom, CBDCs, the list goes on. It's crazy. I've got a photo of my son with this book as well. He's obviously educating himself early on. But we had to keep thinking about what are we going to do next and really understand what are we really up against. Is it governments? Is it institutions? Is it elites? Is it the media? Well, yes, all of those things. But what are we really facing? We're facing an emerging authoritarian and a liberal culture that is growing rapidly across the world. You know, the culture of freedom is what we've been talking about this week. And it's how do we defend that? But not how do we defend that, how do we advance that? And how do we make it exciting again so that people grow up wanting to celebrate freedom and advance it for themselves? So I believe we're at a crossroads in humanity right now. And it's interesting, you know, there's a photo from Paris of everyone celebrating New Year's, and, you know, they were looking at the New Year's fireworks all through their photographs. And it just symbolizes where we are right now, this digital dystopia. And we've got to figure out, we go down path A, which is the technocratic, digitized slave system, or do we go down the path of freedom? And I certainly know which path I will choose, and I know which path everyone in this room is choosing. Now, the good news is, thank you. The good news is nothing can stop the great awakening of humanity. And this is a sticker from the White Rose in the UK. The White Rose, they stick it, they fly it, the entire towns. These things were everywhere. It was a great form of artistic protest, and I wanted to share that there. Now we're building a worldwide counterculture freedom movement. I crossed out the word global because I can't even hear the word global anymore without hearing globalist, so I had to change it to worldwide. So I wanted to share some lessons that we learned from the UK that we could apply globally to work together. Firstly, the revolution will be decentralized. The revolution certainly won't be centralized. So any path forward, we've got to look ourselves in the mirror, and when we find ourselves concentrating people together, we've got to think about, is this an enabler to help people become more decentralized, or are we accidentally replicating the patterns of the world around us? So the revolution will be decentralized. We firmly believe that. And firstly, we've got to create a positive vision of tomorrow. We've got to move away from the fear and the paranoia that can come with what potentially could be coming, and actually cast a spell of a beautiful vision for the future, an optimistic, positive vision that is attractive, that people want to be part of. Because when we do that, we move away from resistance into building something new, and that's the beautiful thing about this conference is it's entirely been about that. You know, how do we move towards that beautiful vision of tomorrow? Because that's how we attract people. It's not particularly attractive when you take your baggage with you of all the problems in the world. Hey, would you like to carry this bag with me, this heavy load of pain? No, but we can make it exciting for people, and it's no surprise to see, you know, Buckminster Fuller mentioned 4 or 5 times here from stage. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you need to build a new model so the existing model becomes obsolete, and I think that's what we're here to do. And if there's ever an event that symbolizes the magic that's happening around the world, it's this. I've been honored to meet people from all across the globe, from my home country of England to people from Ecuador, Uruguay, Mexico, America, all across Europe, all here. There's some amazing stories, and we have to learn from each other. So it's important that we not only come together for events like this, but we form connections that last beyond the event so we can get connected and share stories, because the magic is happening. We just got to distill that. And in doing so, we distribute ideas and actions. And by actions, I'm not just talking about the resistance. We'll need to do that too. We've got to keep building, but we have to resist as well. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But when we share ideas, that's how we can accelerate this entire path. And number 4, we've got to share what's working and what's not working, because there's no point reinventing the wheel. There's no point doing one thing in one culture and then realizing it doesn't work elsewhere. But we have to also respect that everything is different in every territory and learn, what's the difference between a principle and something just not working. But there's also wisdom. One thing is knowledge and action, the other is wisdom. And there's so much wisdom in this room, and if we could just bottle that and share it with the world like we're doing. Try not to lose your voice, it makes it easier to share. And then lastly, leverage the technologies we've talked about this weekend. Let's get decentralized. Technology isn't going away, so let's choose the tools that can help accelerate and enable what we're doing. And I love the panel on that this week. So I want to introduce you to something. You may have seen me walking around all this week with this Free Humanity t-shirt. I got this made for a protest in London in 2020, and it's been the seed of an idea ever since. We wanted to do something to take what we've done in the UK and catalyze it on a global level and actually help to bring people together. Because what we found with the movement of movements in the UK, when we brought all those 40 to 50 groups together, they were so focused on their mission that they needed an outside catalyst to get them to come together like this, so that we can actually take the time to share ideas. So we're launching a new organization called Free Humanity, which is designed to accelerate and advance freedom around the world so that we can create a free, prosperous, and peaceful world, not just for ourselves, but for our 7 generations. We're on a mission to advance the global freedom movement to help amplify and strengthen what's going on. We want to provide tools and resources to help everyone in the work that they're already doing so we can help you move further faster. We want to do exactly what I talked about in the UK, help you connect, to collaborate and co-create, because we do have the answers, both on the resistance and on rebuilding. We have it all. So on that point, we're starting to build coalitions already on the issues that happened within COVID-19. We need accountability for what went wrong. We can't let them get away with it. We need to tackle the WHO, the treaty, and the international health regulations. We've got to tackle the censorship industrial complex. We've got to push back against central bank digital currencies and digital IDs. And we've got to look at anti-liberal environmental policies that could end up in climate lockdowns. But we can't just do that. This conference is about building the future. So we've got to look at how we do that, and how do we share best practice around health, finance, education, food production, new media, and more. We've got to figure out these systems, and there's great work happening all across the world. So how do we accelerate that? How do we fortify that? How do we provide resources so that we can accelerate that path? And I wanted to share a story that Derek shared with me on the way in here. He picked me up from the airport, and he told me about the women of Sharon, which is actually a place near here. It's in this state. Amazing. Well, and I'm paraphrasing, so I don't know the whole story yet. I did do some research before this, in addition to what Derek told me, but the town had been subject to the cartels, and they were logging, and they were taking all this stuff from the town. It was corrupt. The police were corrupt. The mayor was corrupt. And the men just weren't doing anything, so the women just decided we're going to take this on ourselves. And 13 women went and caused a blockade in the road, and they trapped the cartel. They stopped them, they kept them hostage. Now, I won't tell what happened next, the whole story, but lo and behold, the solution is they actually kicked out the cartel. They took back their town. Not only did they do that, they kicked out the police, they kicked out the mayor, they kicked out the politicians. True story. True story. And they created their own self-organizing system. They're still going today. All the stories we've heard about today about new systems, they're doing it. Now, I wanted to tell this story because it illustrates perfectly the power of resisting and rebuilding. Because they couldn't have built that system until they kicked the cartel out. And we've got the WHO, the UN, and all these other organizations still on our door, and we've got to do a bit of work to kick them out of our town so that we can start building. So that's why I think both are important. I think they're 2 wings of the same bird. Whenever it comes to it, either or, I think it's and both. So this story I wanted to share just to show you that the power of when we can mobilize and do both, and when we find the right path for each person, then we can certainly make a difference. So this is a quote from Pedro Chavez, who was one of the community leaders. She said, to defend ourselves, we had to change the whole system. Out with the political parties, out with City Hall, out with the police and everything. We had to organize our own way of living to survive. And they've done that, they've succeeded. It's just an incredible example of what's possible. So who's up for igniting a campaign today to kick out some of those people that we need to kick out of our town? Let me see by show of hands. Now, one of the biggest issues that I talk about back in the UK is the imposition of the WHO, their pandemic treaty, the international health regulations. And I was in two minds whether to do this today because I know it's such a solution-oriented conference. But as I've hopefully illustrated, we need to do both. And this is an opportunity for us to connect globally, to say no to the WHO. So if you're interested in holding the WHO accountable, you show me by raise of hands. Well, I want you to go beyond that. I want you to get to your feet. If you want to hold them accountable, stand up. Stand up today. Stand up. And I don't want you just to stand up. I want you to come and form a line with me here on this stage so we can look the camera in the eye and say, you're getting out of our town. Come up and join me up here. Let's send a message to the WHO today. Come. Come and join me. We need to be able to send a message to those people who are creeping in on our town and our way of life to say, no, we do not accept this any longer. We say no to authoritarianism. We say no to illiberalism. We have to be willing to take a stand. We have to be the crazy first dancers that take the move. And we have to hold strong. And we have to send a message. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Now, it's a simple act. It's a symbol. But that story that Derek shared with me of those brave women just down the road from here showed me how important it is when we take a stand. So for those of you at home, what can you do today to take a stand against the WHO? We've got to do something here. So one of our first campaigns at Free Humanity is to join people up around the world so that we can take that stand, so we can kick this cartel out, so we can start to focus on the natural pathways that we know is much important. Who's up for that? Thank you. So I want to give yourself a round of applause, and I want you to be a witness of this at home and how simple it is to take a stand. We can do this. Together around the world, we will take a stand against authoritarianism. We will take a stand against centralized authorities who are unelected, and we will start to build a better future. So watch this space. We're coming together around the world to say no, because there is a better way, and we're here to build it. Thank you so much, everyone. Give yourselves a round of applause. So stay with me now. The march to millions has just begun. The last few years, it's just the beginning. And I honor everything that's happened, everything I've learned here in this room this week. It's been incredible. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And I invite you, if you're interested in taking a stand with us back at home and here in the room, you can join our movement at freehumanity.org. This is a global first. This is the first any of our audience have heard about this back at home. We're launching it here at the Greater Reset, so you're the very first to hear about it. You've seen me wearing the T-shirts, but it's delighted to share the stage with you. Together we can make a difference, so thank you so much for your time here today. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for having your patience with my voice. And thank you to everyone who made the effort to come here from all around the world and support what's happening at the Greater Reset. I honor all of you. Thank you so much. My name is Dan Eston Gregory, and this is Free Humanity. Thank you so much. So I've got 5 minutes left. I tend to go over time, so I set one of those timers that had 10 minutes less than I needed just to make sure I finished on time. So on that slide there, if you're interested, I also have a podcast. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, etc. Done over 1,000 pieces of content. We've recorded some amazing interviews whilst we're here, whilst I still had my voice, and we're going to attempt to do some more tonight. I'm going to bring my camera out into the lawn later on to capture some snippets with you guys. But we've got 5 minutes, so if there's any questions from the room, I'd love to hear from you. I stunned you to silence, so you're going to let me rest my voice. Yes, go ahead. Mic come, incoming. Mic come. Oh, okay. Thanks for the healing, brother.
So, yeah, we've been doing everything we can in Vancouver, Canada, all over the world to wake people up. What would you say would be the number one thing you learned when it comes to getting information to people who have absolutely zero idea? They just watch CNN. They absolutely think we're all crazy. What is your strategy? Or have you just left it alone?
Great question. So the question was, how do we influence, how do we reach people who are just so far out of the paradigm? Well, my first answer to that is, there are millions of us around the world. In the UK, we had over 1 million people marching in the streets. And I've seen the footage from across the world. There are millions of us already. So I think we already have the building blocks of what we need to accelerate this. And if you look at change throughout history, it's only ever taken a small minority of people to actually affect change. It took 13 women to create lasting change in that town. So first and foremost, I think we already have the resources that we need in order to create the future we want. Now, of course, we want to welcome everyone with us, but I think first let's get organized and figure out how we mobilize what we've already got here to affect change. But my answer to the question, to be specific, one of my old mentors I used to learn a lot from is a guy called Tony Robbins, an American inspirational speaker. And he used to say, in order to influence someone, you have to first find out what already influences them. So the problem is, and this is a Stephen Covey quote, and Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand before being understood. And one of my dear friends, I had lunch with him just before I came out here, he said, like, the people in the freedom movement are like loaded guns. They're ready. As soon as someone like opens an eyelid to them, they're like, fact, like machine gun of fact. So we first need to listen and empathize and understand what's important to that person. Most people care about their health. They do. The reality is, they may not show it in their behaviors, but they do. So we've got to find a way to understand first what's important to the individuals. And I do believe there are values that we share across humanity that have been violated by the last decades of these organizations and governments and institutions. And I think people know it at a subconscious level. So we've got to find a way just to connect heart to heart and empathize and show that we care and not try and influence, but seek to understand. And when you do that, people start to listen and they give you the space, and you'll find that we do have a lot more in common. So there's a lot more that I could share on that. We've done a lot of work on that in the UK, and we've got lots of trainings that we can share, but it's a very important question. Thank you. All right, last one, and then I think we'll go over.
I think we're out of time.
We're out of time. Thank you.
Make some
Thank
more
you all.
noise. Make some noise for Dan Aston Gregory, everybody, joining us from the UK. So grateful. So if you ever thought you were alone, or it's just Americans who are paying attention, or it's just Mexicans, or it's just, whatever group you come from or hang out with, really recognize there are people like all of us here who care about the future, who care about individual liberty and collective liberation, who care about bodily autonomy, and who care about freedom of choice. Those are values that we care about here at this event and that we promote. And we're not alone. There's people like Dan on the other side of the world. We've got a movement in India. Of course, let's start naming out the nations we got represented here. Who we got? Canada. England. Anybody else? Guatemala, Mexico. United States. Peru. Texas is his own country now. Might as well be. But as you can see, and then of course we've got more people online listening. This really is a worldwide movement. And I remember the moment that became clear to me. As I shared a little bit the other day during my talk, when I was first starting out, my activism was very just local, which I think is still important, but it's very much oriented in Houston. And I never even realized there was other people doing similar things in other places. And the first trip I made out of Houston, I went to New York City for the anniversary of 9/11, the 10th anniversary. And I met thousands of activists who were out there for that particular cause, talking about the questions surrounding the 9/11 attacks. And I met people from Germany, from Denmark, from Australia, from England, and it just lit a fire in me. It helped me realize, oh my God, it's not just me and a few people in Houston. It's not just a small group in the United States, that we really are all over the world. So let's take a moment to just take a breath, and let's maybe close your eyes if you feel like it. Take a breath, and just to everybody at home, maybe breathe with us. Just connect to our brothers and sisters all around this planet right now. We've got everything we need, guys. We can do this. We can do this for the ones coming after us, the ones before us, the ones who are here with us right now. We've got every single thing we need. And together we're going to create a better world, guys. So thank you so much for being here with us. Now I want to give you guys a moment to prepare for John Bush, because John always has a lot of energy. He's going to I know he's about to drop some knowledge, and he's got a big announcement about how we can grow the Freedom Cell Network. And for those who are not very familiar with the Freedom Cell Network, John will get you all caught up. And essentially, this is the Freedom Cell Network. We're the ones who put on this event, and we are trying to build the parallel society, and we need your help to do it. So let's listen to John Bush. Please welcome him to the stage. Come on down, brother. Make some noise for John Bush, all the way here from Texas.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I got a clock here too. Give it up for @DBros Live Free, ladies and gentlemen. It's his Twitter handle. X. All right, so, every time I do a talk, I don't prepare at all. And then it's getting closer to the talk, and I'm like, maybe I'll just put an outline together real quick. And then I sit down, and I'm like, you're not going to put an outline together. Just go speak from the heart. I did jot some ideas down, though. But the challenge is, without the outline, who knows if I hit them all? So really, ultimately, this is going to be a big, giant disaster. You guys are screwed. I'm just kidding. We're all screwed together. So my name's John Bush, and I hail from Texas, which, yes, we do consider it to be its own thing, separate from the United States of America. Like if you're traveling abroad and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm from Texas. Or, oh, yeah, Texas. All right, that's great. That's exciting, right? And so here with my lovely wife, and we brought our crew down from Live Free Academy and some of our family and community. And I just want to share before I get started on the speech I've been preparing for my entire life. It's all come down to this moment. I just am really grateful that each and every one of you are joining us in this moment, because what it is that we're building is absolutely beautiful, and we really are changing the world. And I just feel honored to be a part of this movement, because there's a lot of ugliness in the world, but when these good people get together, when we discuss these incredible ideas, and when we focus on solutions, I really do find it to be incredibly special, and it gives me hope. I'm generally an optimistic guy. I've been doing activism and this whole truth thing for 20 years now, so a majority of my life I've been focused on answering the question, what are we going to do to create genuine freedom in our lives? And like I said, I was never pessimistic in spite of all the treachery and all the documentaries we watch on Rumble. I always had hope, because I know that the spirit of freedom is alive within us, even though if it's gone dormant for a lot of people. Once you've tasted and experienced that freedom, or once one area has freedom, in spite of authoritarianism in other areas, if they're capable of seeing what's going on in other areas, they're going to want that too. And I just want to throw out to help with people if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out about the state of the world. Freedom, peace, harmony, that's the default state of things. There's a beautiful natural order in nature. And as Danny and Vanessa pointed out earlier so eloquently, we are nature, right? We all feel like we're all analytical and intellectual and conscious and we're above and beyond all that. Well, I'm sure this audience doesn't, but we are nature. And at the end of the day, nature is beautiful, nature is harmony, and nature is free. Let us never forget that the enemies of freedom have to conspire. They have to operate in darkness with manipulation and sorcery, like literally, in order to carry out their agenda. And at the end of the day, all we had to do is stand up and shine in our true power. So let us never forget that, because that is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so I want to make a big announcement that come February 19th through the 23rd, we're actually going to be doing a free 5-day Freedom Cells Challenge. The whole idea will be to bring together tens of thousands of people to come and learn how to most effectively leverage the Freedom Cell Network in order to create greater freedom in our lives, individually, family, and community, and globally or worldwide, as Dan said. So I want to invite everybody to join me in that. You can sign up for free at livefree.academy/challenge, livefree.academy/challenge. And it's going to help folks that aren't a part of the Freedom Cell Network just yet learn how to get onboarded, what to do once they're a part of the network. It's also going to help existing groups, existing cells, to more effectively work on exit and build goals. And then for leaders in the movement, hopefully it'll provide some inspiration and some wisdom on how we can more effectively grow this whole Freedom Cell thing. So is there anybody in the audience that's just now hearing about the Freedom Cell Network? We've talked about it, we've gone in depth here and there. Just one guy? Okay. This guy's going to dinner with us tonight. We're going to indoctrinate him. Okay, so I'll just explain what it is too, because one of the things that we're going to go over in the challenge is like how to pitch the Freedom Cells Network, how to communicate with other people about the network. But essentially, it's kind of a tool to bring people together, Really, that's all it is. It's a tool to bring people together so we can collectively and cooperatively work on our exit and build goals. There's a website, freedomcells.org. That is a website that really serves as an online place to get people to come together. There's a map, there's cells, there's forums essentially. And we're very active on Telegram as well. But in all reality, the essence and the magic of the Freedom Cell Network lies within people getting together IRL, in real life. Here's a website here. If there's 40,005, we always get a nice boost in the Freedom Cell Network membership during the event, so that's exciting. You can register on the website. If there's people online that aren't a part of the network yet, freedomcells.org is a great way to tap in. I will say, though, there's people that are victims and just always look for others to blame for this, that, and the other. And then there's empowered people that take responsibility for things into their own hands. And I want to encourage people, because as I'm inviting people to go to the website, there's this common phenomenon that happens. And it goes like this. You know, John and Derek told me I should join the Freedom Cells website. I go to the website to go look at the map, and there's nobody in my area at all. What the heck, Derek? That's lame. Thought you guys had this really cool thing going, this Freedom Cell Network. That's right. So we always tell people if there's no one in your area or if there's a dormant group, then it's up to each and every one of us to step into that leadership role and start to build the network out. I like to say, ask not what the Freedom Cell Network can do for you, but what you can do for the Freedom Cell Network. Right? All right. I thought we were hearing from RFK Jr. earlier when Dan was on the stage. Sorry. What? I used to think that guy was cool until he came out all war hawk in favor of Israel's genocide. Imagine most of us are on the same page of that. Did he just say the G word? There goes the stream. No. So anyway, that's the thing when I don't have anything prepared. We go down all these side quests together, and y'all are effectively just getting stream of consciousness, so I'll try not to embarrass my wife. Anyway. All right. So the Freedom Cell Network. When I think about the Freedom Cell Network and when I communicate the ideas and the strategy behind the Freedom Cell Network, I like to look at it in two ways. And unfortunately, the first way I'm going to share, that's what people tend to be most attracted to. And I kind of want to break that down because I think exploring this dichotomy can help us to more effectively bring people into the community and create freedom and do our whole activism thing, okay? So essentially I'm talking about two motivations for activism, for organizing, for doing this Freedom Cell Network thing. The number one motivation for many people is to resist, to fight, to push back, or because we're afraid, okay? And these are all perfectly natural things and totally understandable. There's no judgment anywhere. But there's a reason why the Freedom Cell Network, for the longest time, this was an idea that I had back in 2014, started talking about it. There was a couple disparate cells here and there. Derek learned about the idea and really helped to give it wings and spread it. But for the longest time, it was just slow, kind of steady, little stagnant growth. And before COVID, there was like 1,000 people, which is pretty cool and exciting, and we were definitely excited about it. But after the COVID pandemic, the lockdown, scamdemic, whatever you want to call it, we saw accelerated growth from 1,000 to 40,000 people registered on the website. And that's pretty cool and exciting, but unfortunately, because the lockdowns have ended and people are like, the tyranny's not in my face and I'm no longer experiencing a boot stomping on my neck, I'll just go back to life as usual. Now, of course, the enemies of freedom, the tyrants, the technocrats, the Klaus Schwabs, and the Bill Gateses of the world, they're definitely not resting. They're marching on to their 2030 agenda. But one thing that I hear commonly from Freedom Cell organizers and leaders is that we used to have a solid group getting together, and now people don't show up because they've gone back to life as usual. And one insight I had, I was sharing with Derek a couple days ago, it was like, even though it seems like there's fewer people, quantity, the people that have stuck around are more quality people. They're people that are motivated by the second type of motivation, which is just basically the idea that, hey, we're free, powerful, beautiful, sovereign human beings, and the systems that we were born into aren't in alignment with who we truly are. And so what really motivates me when it comes to the Freedom Cell Network is establishing a new means of organizing ourselves socially, making group decisions, and working together on common goals. A new way of doing life so we can leave a lasting legacy for the future generations that aren't even born yet. But unfortunately, the challenge is not everybody's attracted by that. And one of the reasons I've been thinking about why is because this idea of like, well, what if we can entirely replace the systems we were born into? Like even having a birth certificate and social security number and paying taxes and the public education and this, that, and the other, right? The banks. But the challenge is we're like speculating and contemplating on a new way of doing things, which in many ways is a return to the traditional indigenous way of doing things, more tribal, more connected with the land, more connected with our brothers and sisters. But because it's such a far off thing that we don't experience in day-to-day life, it's hard for people to wrap their head around it. And it's much easier to get caught in the monotony and struggle of day-to-day life than it is to work on a project where we may not even see the ultimate fruits of our labor ever in our lifetime. It's easier to push back, it's easier to go to the protest, it's easier to pull the ballot box lever. They still have a ballot box lever? Is that a thing? I don't know. I hadn't voted in like 20 years, so I really don't know. Give it up for not voting. All right. I used to vote in every single election as soon as I was 18, but then nobody I ever voted for won, like ever. And then I was like, is there something wrong with me and my ideas? There was actually one person, but she wasn't like a libertarian or anything. It was just a conservative judge, and I voted for her because she dismissed a traffic ticket. I was like, she tried to be a Ron Paul lady, but really she was just a conservative Republican. Anyway, I digress. Also along the way, I realized that ultimately if we want to create freedom, it's up to each and every one of us to take that into our own hands, change the way that we live, and in turn, we will create the free society that we all desire. Like Samuel Edward Konkin said, it's the consistent application of the philosophy of liberty that creates the free society. Okay, so in marketing and in my business and entrepreneurship, I've really studied human psychology and what motivates people. And like I said, people aren't motivated by doing hard work. For example, we just did this 30-day health challenge. That's what came to mind. And it was like, hey, here's what we're going to present for you. Pay $297 and then work out for 30 days straight. No drinking the entire time, no cigarettes. You can't even drink coffee when you first wake up either. But you're going to pay us $297 to go through that. The offer didn't work out as well as we had hoped. And, breaking it down and doing the whole Monday morning quarterback thing, we came to find, like, sometimes people don't want to put in the work. And that's something that we need to be aware of. So what does this mean for us in our efforts to grow the Freedom Cell Network? Well, we need, as leaders, to help people understand the work that it is that we're doing, to help give people a strong and powerful why. And like I said, at times it's challenging for people to grasp what it is that we're building, a world without government, a world without coercion, a decentralized, voluntary, and transparent world. And it's going to take a long time. Ultimately, it's going to take multiple generations, and people are simply seeking simple solutions that give them immediate gratification. So on that note, understanding that, we don't need to resist that or push back on that. We just need to be aware of it. So whenever there's like a single issue, a hot button thing, we can organize around that and help people get attracted to the network around that. But then it's up to each and every one of us to cultivate those relationships and help people have a firmer understanding of what it is really that we're trying to do. So for example, with COVID and the lockdowns, of course, that was this big, sexy, attractive, scary kind of thing that's going on, and it attracted a whole lot of people. People come into the fray. Once we have people in the community, in the movement, in the network, the next question is, well, what are we going to do with our time now? Well, I think one thing that we could do as a group, but also individually, and this is something I'd love for you guys to have as a takeaway, because when we're in the moment, when we're all together, it's easy to be excited and passionate and like, well, I'm going to go home and completely change everything. But then when we get back home, we get caught in the monotony and the struggle of life, and we often lose sight of those goals and those things that we said we were going to do while we're at the event. So one thing that you can do with your local group and in your own individual life is answer this question. what are the areas of my life in which I'm most dependent on centralized and coercive institutions? It's a great exercise, and it's a great way to decide and determine what we should spend our time doing, right? So what areas of my life are my most dependent on the system? Because it's those areas where we are most vulnerable to control and manipulation, right? This is already something many people were aware of, but after COVID, it's like, wow, they'll stop at nothing to try to pressure, coerce, manipulate, strong arm, twist our arm, socially engineer us into doing something that we may not have wanted to do. And unfortunately, a lot of people succumbed ED. But does that word end with a B? Succumb? Okay. We're all learning together. This is good. It's healthy stuff. So unfortunately, a lot of people succumbed to the pressure and ended up getting the stupid shot, right? Ultimately, more so, it was like the media campaign worked for most people, but then there were still holdouts. And then they're like, well, why don't we take their jobs away from them? And then a lot of people buckled. But I think what caused people to buckle the most was the pressure from their family members at the end, where it's like people were holding out. And they're like, you're still freaking holding out. Grandma's dying, all sorts of stuff. And it was the pressure, that social pressure, wanting to fit in with the crowd, wanting to fit in with the group. Which we learned from Jason Christoff. Dan had when the folks at the beach, right? We're a human social animal. Everybody wants to be involved. But nonetheless, we learned that their tactic is to make life challenging for people so they'll get them to do what they want them to do. And that's a strategy that they'll utilize with food, locking people out of their bank accounts, those that supported the Canadian trucker protest, right? So we need to be aware of that, we need to preempt that, and we need to ask ourselves, in what ways am I dependent on the system? And if you're asking, what do I do when I get back home? We'll come up with goals centered around those areas in which you're most dependent. For example, if all your money's in the bank, or if you use PayPal and credit card all the time, and you don't have cryptocurrency or a local paper trade currency, or you don't have a barter network or whatever it may be, that may be a solid area. Or if you are entirely dependent on centralized food sources like the grocery store, and their chemical food, fake food, it's like, sure, you could have natural organic food, but it's gonna cost you extra. Isn't that weird? There's like more chemicals, but it's more expensive, or it's less expensive to have more chemicals. I don't know. Anyway, that's one thing where you could be like, what am I going to do when I get back home? Well, let me be really clear and be real with myself about where am I most vulnerable, where am I most dependent on the system. And that's something that you could do in your own life. That's something that you could do with your family. And it's also something you could do as a Freedom Cell group. So the idea with the Freedom Cells thing is bring people into the fray. If there's people that are motivated and attracted by the latest story of the day, the latest tyranny, the latest pressure, digital ID, surveillance, food shortages, use that as a recruiting mechanism, but then get down to brass tacks and try to identify areas where most people are concerned and what can we do in our local Freedom Cell group. Just a little tidbit there. So one thing as well, if you're recruiting folks for the Freedom Cell Network, is to help overcome objections. So I just want to share something that I've become really crystal clear about. Along the way, I think it's more so in our community, we've kind of been programmed to always think things are going to fail or go wrong. Or we've watched so damn many conspiracy documentaries that now we believe the New World Order, the Predator Class, the World Economic Forum, that they're omnipotent. And even when something positive happens, we always figure out a way to make it part of the plan. That's part of the plan, it's part of the program. That's a trick. They're just doing that so they can suck us in. It's a con, it's co-opt. That person's controlled opposition. They just gotta be like a con man, we gotta believe in them. And I'm like, are you kidding me, guys? We can't ever have any victories? Like, what kind of miserable life is that when the New World Order is so powerful that, like, when we get a raise at our job or something, it's all part of this dastardly plan? And I recognize that. It's this defeatist thing, and I think in all reality, it has a lot to do with the media that we consume, which is another reason why events like this are so damn powerful, because we got people on stage, we got people that are in attendance that are doing really incredible things. And even though we're living at a time with crazy authoritarianism, sometimes I say we're living in the most authoritarian time ever, but then I think back that it wasn't that long ago when you questioned the divine right of kings that they would cut your head off, put it on a stake for all of the town to see. We got things pretty good nowadays compared to that. But a lot of people, we consume so much media, and it's like the New World Order's got this dastardly plan, and they're marching forward, and we like internalize that, and then we can't see a victory if it slapped us in the face. Like this guy, I'm not a big political guy, but I do think that it's constructive to kind of see where things are going. This guy, Javier Milei or whatever, in Argentina. So everyone's like, well, he went to the World Economic Forum out several years ago, and he just went recently. And as soon as people saw him on the website, he's going to speak at the World Economic Forum. It was literally like 7 days ago or something. They're like, it's part of the plan. You should have never been happy and excited that somebody that says good things about freedom and libertarianism got elected. But then you watch the video that he gave, and he's like completely just lecturing them on socialism and why it's total BS and why they're parasitic. And he's like dropping all these haymakers. But still, there's people in the audience that are like, no, that's part of the plan too. They got to get us to believe and be false hope, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, and I know where this comes from because, like I said earlier, like I quote unquote woke up back in 2002 when I caught a documentary by Alex Jones on cable access in Austin. Because Alex Jones is from Austin, that's where I was from. In fact, we used to call into Alex Jones and prank call him on the cable access show. He's always all worked up. Anyway, when I was in college, I would go to schools on Tuesday and Thursday, and I would always listen to the InfoWars show. And I thought I was like intellectually superior to all the normies behind me, but in reality, I was freaked out. And it's like maybe ignorance is bliss, because how free are you when we're completely freaked out all the time? How free are we when we're word vomiting all over our family members at Thanksgiving dinner and we have terrible, unhealthy relationships? Is that the freedom? That's not the freedom that I desire. But I did come to realize, like, wow. And I thought everything was a conspiracy, and I would annoy my parents on our long road trips, and I'd be pointing out the symbolism and the Exxon Mobil sign and all this. Like, I don't know how they put up with me. But that's not what I want for myself, and it's not what I want for you. Far too often, we project omnipotence on the enemies of freedom. And as I shared before, as I started with, they have to use deceit and manipulation in order to carry out their agenda. We just have to align ourselves with our highest good, and all will be well. But a lot of people, too, are like defeated such that we bring up the idea of the Freedom Cell Network, and we're like, hey, I know people have been feeling alone and isolated. There's actually this global community of really cool people, very conscious. They get together, they work on common goals, they're gardening, they're getting the kids together. It's really cool. And the first thing that pops in people's heads is, well, it sounds like I'm just going to be on the list and government's going to take me away. And for some reason, maybe this is resonating with you, a lot of people's first instinct is to think of a way that it can't work rather than to sit back and be like, maybe it actually is working. You know what I'm talking about? Like, we've like gotten so defeated and just weakened, really. And that's exactly where the predator class wants people to be. So defeated and weakened that, like I said before, a victory could slap them in the face and they would still try to go through mental gymnastics to figure out a way that it was part of the plan. So I want to encourage folks, when you're talking about the Freedom Cell Network to people, there's some common objections that I've seen and I've heard, and that's one of them. What if I go to the website and I register, I'm just putting myself on a list. And I always like to tell people, look, if we're all on the list, then the list is meaningless, basically, right? Come on. It's also like, well, if I got people like Derek Bros and this Dan guy and all these cool people, that's the in crowd. Right? Those are the cool guys in high school. We were probably all lame in high school, right? Yeah, pretty much. But now we're pretty cool. So that's a common objection, and it all comes from fear. And let us not be, I'm trying to joke around and be playful here, but let's understand that people are terrified, and fear is something that people always revert back to in many different instances, especially if they've been banging on documentaries that talk about blueprint for global enslavement, reduction of the population, 90%, global biodiversity assessment, eliminate everybody, yada, 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 right? Of course they're going to be afraid. So some ways to overcome that, just some tips if you decide to take up the banner of growing the Freedom Cell Network with us. Encourage people not to put their home address. So it's like, you're worried about being on a list, why don't you just make a dummy email account? I'm sure Hakeem can tell you all about how to do that. Just make a new email address. You don't even have to use your real name. You can put an address down the street, right? Because when you sign up on the website, we encourage you to put yourself on a map. And everyone's all freaked out. Why am I going to put myself? I'm trying to hide out. I mean, in all reality, being more public and more present with what it is that we're doing, it normalizes things. And we have nothing to hide. We're not doing anything wrong. We're just getting together and opting out of the government and figuring out ways to not pay our taxes. Looking at you, IRS. So just encourage people to not put their home address, and then that really resolves anything. You can connect with the VPN if you're genuinely that scared. But it's kind of funny, though, when people tell me that, they're like, oh, no, I'm just going to get rounded up and be put on this list. I'm like, bro, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been arrested a couple times for political activism, but it's not like I got put in a gulag or they didn't come target me because of these ideas. In fact, when I first came up with this idea for Freedom Cells, I was actually nervous to share it publicly because I thought it was so powerful and so provocative that surely they'd just lock me up and string me up right away. And so I had to work up the courage to give the first speech I gave on Freedom Cells. And then for the longest time, absolutely nothing happened. And I was like, it's going to be okay, right? But now that it's grown into this huge thing, it's like, wow, this is really freaking cool. But here we are having these giant events and all these people coming together and broadcasting it, hundreds of people watching, thousands and thousands will watch the replays. And here we are. They're not raiding us. They're not doing mass arrests. So oftentimes, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Is that another JFK quote? It's two. Was that JFK? Fear of false events appearing real. Anyway, so that's one objection. Another objection I hit on earlier, I went to the website, there's nobody there. This is a bust, right? Well, we need people to step into that leadership role. And there's a lot of folks that don't have skills necessarily to lead, but I know within each and every one of us, no matter how awkward or socially weird we happen to be, or uncomfortable or lacking confidence, each and every one of us has a leader within us. And it all starts with leading our own lives, leading our household, and then projecting that beyond and leading other people of like mind. So I want to encourage people to push through that and to help lead and create. And another thing, when we get that, I get triggered when which there's something deeper rooted there with the trigger, as Lainey was sharing. But I get triggered when people say that, I went to the website, there's nobody there. Meh. But like I said before, successful people take responsibility for everything. So as a leader in the movement, as somebody that puts these ideas out there, I take responsibility for not teaching people more or letting them know that there may or may not be people in your area. But it's up to you to step into that and to make things happen, okay? Another objection people have, and something that I've talked to some of you guys about this week, is like I said, we had a great turnout. People were showing up, and then the lockdowns kind of subsided, and now nobody shows up. So how can we make our network, our local movement sticky? How can we create an environment where people continuously show up? And I would encourage you to have fun. To not just have a meeting where it's one person talking at the other people and it starts to kind of get monotonous and yeah, we hear from this guy all the time. In fact, that's one of my insecurities. We have a local Freedom Cell meetup and I get up and do a hoorah speech. And I'm like, are these people getting tired of hearing from me? What the heck? So as a leader, it's important to bring up new people and bring others up to share their stories and highlight the successes that people are doing. But the point I want to make is have fun. It shouldn't be a connection, a thing that is resonated in fear. It should be hope, optimism, fun, and joy. So that's a cool thing about the events that Derek does. There's always a concert and music element, and people get to go hang out and dance together. There's something very powerful about that. Bruce Bowman puts together music and concerts, and it's always we're having fun, come check out the music, come for the music, stay for the message. Same thing, Derek would do Visionary Noise in Houston, right? So if people aren't sticking around because they were only motivated out of fear of a lockdown or something, then take responsibility as a leader to make things more fun. Maybe every once in a while we go bowling or something. F it, dude, we're going bowling, right? You guys know that one? Big Lebowski? All right, so those are just some objections that people have oftentimes. And as a leader, it's up to us to overcome those objections and be loud and proud about all of that stuff. All right, but I do want to encourage you, things are going to get challenging if you're leading, and it's always the darkest before dawn. And in all reality, oftentimes I speculate, what is the future actually going to look like for us? Because it's painfully clear that there's a small group of dastardly people that are hell-bent on controlling everyone. Right? That's what this whole Great Reset is all about. We want to control people through technology, surveillance, social engineering, digital IDs, CBDCs, social credit scores, vaccine passports, which are more about controlling people's movement. The vaccine was just the first application. And it's like, wow, they really have their plans laid out pretty strongly, and they got some pretty big picture visions. So what does it actually look like for us when we don't comply? So these are the kind of questions we got to ask ourselves. And that, in my opinion, is why this whole exit and build thing is so damn important. Because it's easy to control people when they're dependent on their systems. It's much more challenging when we've essentially de facto become independent already. It's also why I'm such a big advocate for people getting out of the cities and move into the country. Because in the country, things are more laissez-faire. Like we don't really have the World Health Organization in Bastrop County, Texas. There's not really much going on. It was a very low density people that took the vaccine. It was like 20 or 30% of the people. It wasn't a majority. So I do think that the hope and the freedom lies within decoupling ourselves as much as possible from their systems. And there's actually, you guys have seen the article that was like, the year's 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and I've never been happier. Are these guys fooling up, are they serious with that messaging that's actually going to be attractive to people? But you read the article, and it's like the robots took over, we lost our jobs, but everything's handled for us, and we don't own anything. I like rent out my couch when I'm not using it, and blah, blah, blah. I don't even rent it out. It's just like done for me with AI. You're not going to be using the couch. The camera on the TV noticed you haven't been using the couch between 2 and 3 p.m. We've invited Gary from down the street to come sleep on your couch during those times, and we've awarded you 12 credits for the service of doing so. Like, that's the future that many people are going to get swarmed into. But if you read down in the article, it's like, but I really worry about the people that didn't go along with it all when the robots took our jobs. They live in little 19th century villages and self-supplying communities outside the country. It's literally what it says. And I'm like, that's us, right? So I believe the hope and this whole exit and build thing, it lies in the whole purpose of the Freedom Cell Network. When I came up with this idea, the underlying ethos was strength in numbers. The more of us that see through the disguise, stop believing the lies, and break free of being hypnotized. I can rap too. The stronger we will be. Because if it's just a small pocket, a couple people here and there, and they're like, no, we're not going along. I will not rent my couch to Gary. He always leaves fingernail clippings on the couch and stuff. It's this Gary guy. I haven't taken a shower in 2 months. The more of us that say, no, we're not going along with it, the more secure we can be in expressing and asserting our sovereignty. And that's what the Freedom Cell Network is all about. We're trying to bring as many people together so we can feel comfortable and confident declaring our independence, and so we're not the lone wolf that makes it easier to get crushed. That's ultimately the mission, and that's ultimately what this network is all about. So I want to just hit again on the challenge. I really want to encourage people to sign up. You can go to livefree.academy/challenge, livefree.academy/challenge. One of the things that we're going to be doing with this, in addition to helping people to onboard new people, so for those of you that are already part of the network, we're going to expect you to help encourage other people to join. It's going to be a great introduction to the community, to the network, and we're going to help people get onboarded to the website, to the Telegram groups. And we're going to help the leaders to have meetings already ready to go. We're going to create a bunch of resources, like some flyers. There's already flyers on the website, by the way, Miriam made. You just go to freedomcells.org, register, and on the back end, there's flyers. You can actually put information about your local community. We're going to give people advice on what to do with a group. How do you set goals? How do you check in? How do you run an effective meeting that doesn't get taken over, that isn't boring, that doesn't just drown and go on and on and on? And then we're going to talk about how can we take things to the next level. Because ultimately right now, this vision for the Freedom Cell Network, it's immensely benefiting people now. And you guys have no idea how much it fills my heart with joy to hear from you guys when you express gratitude or just share that you have a community and you met people. And at the height of the lockdowns, there were people that felt all isolated and alone, but through the Freedom Cells movement, they were able to find other people. I met somebody at the Free State Project's Pork Fest, and I walked by and they're like, oh my God, hey, I want to introduce you to our Freedom Cell group. And there was 10 different, it was eight families all came, and they're like, we thought we were all alone. We lived in New York State. It was absolutely terrible during the lockdowns. We found this Freedom Cell community. We formed a homeschool co-op with our kids, and now we all spend time together. We're trying to buy land together. It's like, wow, this is incredible. And so people are benefiting, on a micro scale, but looking to the future, having that vision for where this could go. Ultimately, I'd love to see us create decentralized, consensus-based decision-making systems so we could pull resources and maybe buy land, maybe we build a community center, maybe we fund events, maybe the Freedom Cell Network sponsors events to help spread the message. And ultimately, the goal that we're trying to do here is replace government and mega corporations as a means of fulfilling our wants and needs. Like, that's the work that we're doing here. So we're going to teach people how to onboard, we're going to help empower leaders, but we're also going to use it as a initiative, as a rallying cry to grow the network from 40,000 people that are on the website now to 100,000. So I want to announce that goal, announce it here. By the end of 2024, I am going to do everything I can, and I invite you guys to join me to grow the network to 100,000 people. That will more than double the network. Now, when we say there's 40,000 people in the network and the movement, it's just 40,000 people that have registered on the website. Most of those people aren't around anymore. They're not doing anything. There's like a core group of people, many of them in the room right now. So there's really no way to estimate exactly how many people are participating. Maybe there's even more, actually. We really have no idea. They're just not on the website. They're like, screw you guys, I'm not going to be on that list, right? But the cool thing is if we go from 40,000 to 100,000 now, we can rest assured that the 60,000 new people that joined will be active, right? Because we're going to have all sorts of cool stuff for them to do, and it's going to be fun, and they're going to be new, fresh people. So imagine having, 75, 80,000 people all on the same page, all ready and willing to participate in furthering the exit and build movement. I think it really could make a difference in the quality of life we enjoy, in the community that we're a part of. Events like this, if we grow the network to 100,000, there'll be more people showing up, there'll be more incredible people doing big things that we can hear from. So I really think that this is an opportunity, a rallying cry, something to just organize around. Because there's disparate groups with different ideas and different values, and really what we center around is the idea of freedom. And I'll just end with this. Dan earlier was talking about Charan, which is not very far from here. I had the privilege, my wife and I, we went and visited and met with the elders. And they came to our hotel and summoned us and showed us all around the community. And they showed us their sacred spring where they would feed water from the community. And they showed us the forest where they were illegally logging and planting. There's an illegal avocado trade in Mexico. And they were really, really just abusing the community. And one of the things that spurred the women to rise up is that they were kidnapping people. And they would drive through the town and humiliate the people. It was insult to injury. You're gonna already do all these ugly things and then you're gonna humiliate us? And that's when they said, basta ya, enough is enough, right? But after going there and seeing how they threw out their old government, they instituted an indigenous form of government, I started to ask myself, why haven't we done something like that? What is it? And there's one thing that Charan has that not many other places have. They have, and this comes up in libertarian circles. It's like an alt-right thing where it's we need to have cultural homogeny and blah, 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 blah. But when you think about it, in Charan, there's the same family bloodlines that resisted the Aztecs and the Spaniards that are now resisting the corrupt local government and the gangs, the malos. And it's that homogeny, it's that common sangre, the same blood, right? And so a challenge that we have is we have diverse people, diverse ideas, but let us unite behind a common desire to live a life in alignment with our inherent sovereignty, because at the end of the day, that's what each and every one of us deserve. Now, I don't want to come back to the fear thing, but it is a powerful motivator. I know that I don't want my grandchildren, my children, my great-grandchildren growing up in a world where they're digitally enslaved from birth. And like Derek says so many times, they are counting on each and every one of us to do the work now, so that is not their reality. And I want to thank those of you that are part of the Freedom Cell Network. I want to encourage you to redouble your efforts. And for those of you that haven't joined yet, please join us, because I do believe that this can be a vessel to create greater freedom, prosperity, community, security for us and the future generations to come. And anytime you start feeling that doubt, just understand we have truth on our side, we have unity on our side, and let us not forget the default state of human beings and nature is living free. So let's rise up, let's stand in our true power, and there's no holding us down. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, make some noise for John. Who's going to join the Freedom Cell Network? freedomcells.org. If you're not on already, go check it out. Let's build the movement to 100,000. Let's see that number on the front of the website go to 100,000 and 1 million and see how far we can take it. All right, we got another presenter coming up. Before we do, I want to invite my brother Yoshi up to the stage. He's got an announcement for everybody.
Hello, familia. What a beautiful week we had this time, learning so many amazing things in order to move forward and create the reality we want to create. With that said, I would like to take this further as we have a retreat for 4 days. Everything we've been talking about here, we can actually practice it and have a little taste of what is it to live in community, what is it to live self-sufficient, planting trees, eating healthy, creating no trash, having no money during this day, and just feeling the love of what our reality really we want it to be. And for that, we are actually doing a raffle. You can win a ticket. It's a $444 ticket for 4 days to be on the retreat. You can still sign up. We're in the table over there, and we're at the end of today, we're going to announce the winner. And last thing, we're also having a ceremony for a closing ceremony. You can still write down what is it your intention in your life is, and we're going to go plant it right over there right at the end. We're going to do a big circle just like here. Over 100 people were in the last one. We're going to have a beautiful chanting there. So thank you very much. Stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, brother Yoshi. All right. Just a couple other mentions before we bring on our next speaker. Is anybody ready for James Corbett? Excited about James Corbett? I just want to say, because James is behind stage right now, that, okay, look, let's do this. If you want James to come in person next year, if we want us to do everything we can possibly to make that happen, make some noise for James Corbett. James is, I see his face, he's watching. All right. Okay, so before we get to James, though, just want to mention a couple more of our sponsors. Again, the reason we mention these sponsors and we play these videos is because they help us run this thing. Full transparency, this event costs $30,000 to put together. And in order to make that happen, a lot of energy, time, sponsors, and energy has to happen. And so one of the folks who are supporting us, not only, well, here's all the sponsors. Yeah, show some love to that, thegreaterreset.org/sponsors. Please check them out. We got a wide range of people. Catherine Austin Fitz, Solari Report. Right now we're going to talk about ARCA, the self-sufficient villages. I mentioned them the other day. This is, again, they consider it to be a civilization building project. And we heard from David Rodriguez as well as Etienne about voluntarism, which is just another word, kind of nicer word to say for anarchist, those of us who don't believe we need government in our lives, and who also believe in voluntary association. So people like us, they're trying to create a network of people, and this is based in Mexico. They're looking for a network of individual anarchists, of freedom-minded people, whatever you want to label yourself, and they're putting together tools, directories, resources for people like us to help you exit and build specifically in Mexico. So if you are living in Mexico already, or you're thinking about coming to Mexico, you can check out the website right there. It's arca.land. That's ARCA.land, L-A-N-D. And that project is also, as I mentioned earlier, is being organized, run by one of our previous speakers, Mariano Goren, and we're very grateful to have him on board and to support us. All right. So without further ado, let's make some big noise for James Corbett. Bring him to the stage. Make some noise before James takes over. Show some love to
everybody.
James. Yes. And I want to say this, James, before you do take over, because this is coming from the heart. Really, over the years, James has done so much work on his own, but he has made so much effort to help boost my work. How many people have seen me in an interview on James Corbett? A lot of people have found my work that way, and James consistently promotes the Greater Reset, and we're so grateful because, like us, James is focused on solutions, and he's about to give us a lot of knowledge. So thank you, James. Take it over.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Derek. And thank you to everyone for coming out there in person in Mexico. Man, I wish I could be there with you. But here I am in Japan, where it is freezing cold. So maybe next year I will be in the sunny climes of Mexico at this time of year instead of freezing my butt off here in Japan. But either way, we'll make it work. Anyway, well, thank you guys for coming to join me for this live presentation. In fact, a live edition of the Corbett Report and everybody's favorite edition of the Corbett Report, Problems Watch. That's right. You guys know that week in and week out, every week, no matter what, rain or shine, I am here focusing on problems, not solutions. No, the things that are going wrong with the world, just dwelling on them and thinking about them endlessly and providing no path forward. You know, that's what my work is about. So in that spirit, in that vein, boy, do I have a presentation for you today. How not to build community. Your guide to completely failing to bring people together in the real world for the terminally online. And, if there's anything that my 17 years of experience here in the online space has taught me, it is how not to build community. So boy, are you guys in for a treat today. All right. Are you ready? Let's go. So what would be the first thing that you would think of if you're going to not build community? First rule, this isn't in any particular order, but I think this one is pretty important. Keep it digital, guys. Don't bring people together in the real world. Come on. No. You want to keep it online forums or chats. The important thing is that it's anonymous. It's a bunch of anonymous people coming together in some sort of digital form. What could go wrong? In fact, it'll be easily spoofed and gamed and no doubt invaded by trolls galore right away. So, well, that'll make sure no one wants to join your community, so you don't have to worry about managing anything. Nothing will happen. No change will take place. You will affect nothing in the real world, so nothing can go wrong, right? You just keep it digital. Just continue to talk to and people in your echo chamber over and over for the rest of your life. That's how you not build community, right? All right, number 2, critique, complain, condemn. Yes, as everyone knows, clearly the smartest person in the room is the person who can come up with the quickest and fastest way of dismissing whatever new idea is presented. So you can be that smartest guy in the room by completely poo-pooing, critiquing, condemning, dismissing anything that people put forward as a way to actually bring people together in the real world. No. That's not going to work because. There's always a reason that you can give why something's not going to work. And everyone will appreciate you for bringing that reason to their attention, right? How about number 3? Leaders, committees, bureaucracy. Yes, this is the key for moving forward. First of all, everyone, as we know, every organization needs a leader, an alpha male that you can appoint as the person that everyone will just follow and obey, right? That's something that you need to have a community. And so once you appoint your leader, here's the best part. Let's say he's a really good leader and everyone follows him. Then that provides a key and convenient decapitation point for all of the feds and trolls and other infiltrators that will no doubt try to get into your organization. Or maybe it's a leader that seems all right at first, but then he starts leading you off a cliff. Well, then you get to knock him off of the pedestal you put him on in the first place. And everyone loves that. What do people love more than putting someone on a pedestal? Knocking them off that pedestal. So yay. Either way, you win when you appoint a leader. And then committees, bureaucracy, red tape, meetings. This is how we get things not done in our not community. Right, guys? We spend hours and hours discussing and filling out forms and setting up committees to talk about the possibility of doing something rather than actually getting anything done in the real world. So leaders, committees, bureaucracy, very important if we're going to move forward with this not community. The 4th thing we've got to do, of course, is litmus tests. Litmus tests. Yes, absolutely. Please, whenever you have a community, it's incredibly important that you gatekeep it in every way possible on every possible line that you can think of. What? You don't believe 9/11 was an inside job? Wait, no, you do believe 9/11 was an inside job, but you think the towers were brought down by nukes instead of space beams. Wait, no, okay, you do believe 9/11 was an inside job, and you do think that the towers were brought down by space beams, but you don't acknowledge that the planes were holograms. Wait, okay, you do believe 9/11 was an inside job that was caused by space beams and holograms, but you refuse to admit that the entire plot was masterminded by Jewish reptiles in the Vatican. No, okay, you do believe 9/11 was a space beam hologram plot puppeteered by Jewish Vatican reptiles, but you wear red socks on a Friday. That's it. You're out. I can't believe you wear red socks on a Friday, and that's terrible. You are a woke libtard pinko hippie that has no place in my community. Let me tell you. So yeah, as you can see, no matter how much you agree with someone, there's always something that you will disagree with them about, right? And then you can just make that your, oh no, I don't want to have anything to do with you, and you will get out of my community. That way, you can essentially whittle everyone out of your community, and you will be down to your community of one. I'm telling you, this is how you not build community, guys. Okay, the next thing we can do, less action, more talk. I mean, who needs action when you got words, right, guys? Anyway, this one should be pretty obvious, but for anyone who's spent time in committees and meetings or online discussions, you'll know that the more you sit there around talking, the less you will actually get anything done in the real world, thus stopping community from forming. Win-win, right? All right, the next thing you got to do, of course, you've got to be, if you're going to take charge of this not community, it's my way or the highway, and you have to violently and just obstinately reject absolutely anyone who comes forward with any idea that in any way differs from yours, because there's only one way to do things. That's my way. And if you don't like it, well, get lost. I'm not going to work with you. And I can't even live in a community with someone else who does or something in a different way than I would do it. So it has to be my way, right? That's a good way to get people not on your side. The next thing we got to do, of course, only respond to crises. Of course, everyone knows the best time to actually get people together in the real world and to get them working towards the same thing is when they're plunged deep into a crisis. Just when everything is fine, that's the time to rest, go back to partying. Who cares about things? Whatever. You know, that's normal times. And then when the doo-doo hits the oscillator and suddenly the whole world is locking down and things, that's when you get concerned. And you're only concerned for as long as that emergency situation is happening. And then when things start going back to normal or the new normal, then you just go back to your partying lifestyle and you don't care about things until the next crisis hits. That's how it works when you're trying to build community. Surely. All right. I think we're making some good progress here, but let's see what else we can do. Oh, of course, when you're trying to build a community, it's important that you focus on that one person in your life that you care about, and thus that you have to have in your community. And you have to continue to pester that one person and spend all of your time and effort trying to convince that one person of that thing that you want to do. And that will get them into the community with you. As you can see from the body language expressed here, of course, people love it when you just constantly nag them and pester them and plead with them. It's also a good way to get a date with the girl that you're interested in. So, yes, just pester and pester and pester. And what could go wrong? Oh, wait. Well, that person probably won't want to be in community with you, and thus you will solve the problem of actually building community. All right, and number 9, if it's tough, it's not worth doing, right? Right, guys? Everyone knows this. Sometimes it's going to be a lot of work to actually build a community. And even if you do, it'll probably go wrong in some way. It won't be perfect. There will be problems. There will be probably someone that you don't get along with or something like that. So just give up. I mean, what's the point in trying if it's going to be tough? If it's not going to work 100% perfectly straight out of the box with no possibility of ever going wrong, then it can't possibly be worth actually doing that thing, right? Well, well, if you don't want to build community anyway. And of course, number 10, most importantly, trust me, bro. I know what I'm talking about. I've been online for a long time. I know how to do this. And so just take my word for it. Don't think about it for yourself. You'll be fine. This is how not to build community. And I appreciate you all for coming out for this talk today, as I have really attempted to put together. Oh, wait, sorry. I thought I was someone else. Oh no. Problems Watch? What? No, I'm James Corbett of the Corbett Report. I do Solutions Watch. Sorry guys. I totally got my wires crossed there. No, we're not here talking about how not to build community today. Today we're going to talk about how to build community. And I have a feeling this yeah. Sorry, guys. My slides aren't going to work because animations aren't going to work here. I had this whole animation thing going on, but oh well. I will tell you what is supposed to happen with regard to this slide. Not is going to disappear. It's going to be how to build community. So, okay, let's talk about Solutions Watch. Let's talk about how to build community, and let's see how we can adjust all of these things that we've just looked at to be a little bit different than what we were talking about before. This is number 1. You can't read this. Sorry, guys, but I'll read it for you. So instead of keeping it digital, keep it real. Bring it into the real world. Bring real people together in the real world. Seems like a no-brainer for the first thing that you should do if you're going to actually attempt to build community, right? Keep it real. Bring people together. Have physical meetings face to face. It seems pretty obvious. And in fact, in any other time in human history, it wouldn't need to be stated or elaborated. But unfortunately, we are moving into the terminally online age in which there is a generation growing up that literally has never been in a disconnected, non-digital world. Everything that they do is in a device, and they think in terms of social media. And as I've had cause to observe in the work that I'm doing at the Corbett Report for the last 17 years, I think that is fundamentally changing the way that people even think about what community is or how to act in community. And I have noticed this in some interesting ways. Sometimes in the course of my research, I will be looking at some online forum discussion or something that was happening back in 2003. And it truly does seem like a different planet when you were reading some of these discussions from 15 years ago, where people, or 20 years ago, man, I really am getting old. What is time anyway? When you look at some of these discussions from decades ago that were taking place online, that seemed more like discussions that you would have with real human beings in the real world, where you would say something and then you would actually you would take on board what someone else was saying, and then you'd try to respond to that, and then there'd be some back and forth, and everyone seemed vaguely reasonable. And I've seen this enough to know that it's not just something that happens once or twice or here and there. It really, I honestly think that people's ability to communicate and to share ideas and discuss has fundamentally changed over the course of the past couple of decades. And I think that's partly a function of being in the digital online space and seeing the way that people react and act and interact in these anonymous online social media spaces. Trolls, bots, what have you, people fighting with each other, flame wars, all of this. And unfortunately, people are starting to believe that that is the way that we as human beings act with each other, and they are starting to manifest that in the real world as well. So it is extremely important, I think, if we're going to build actual community, to do it in real world rather than online. The next one, again, sorry guys, you can't read this. I will read it for you. You'll remember number 2 was critique, complain, condemn. Well, instead of that, how about listen, think, respond? I am not saying that people should shut up and hold their complaints or whatever to themselves and never share anything. No, of course not. Of course, if you have critiques of what is being presented in your community, or somebody is coming up with an idea that you don't like or think that is very useful, you're going to want to respond to them in a thoughtful manner, right? There are more intelligent and thoughtful ways to have discussions rather than simply poo-pooing, critiquing, condemning in the vein of Simpsons comic book guy, worst idea ever. No, 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 no. In this case, what we can do is actually model discussion with people in which, first of all, you listen to other people's ideas, you take them on board, you think about them, you try to see it from the other person's point of view, then you respond with your point of view. And through dialogue, hopefully you can move things forward in a productive manner rather than simply critiquing everything. And again, I think that is also part of the function of the digital online spaces that we find ourselves in, is that generally speaking, it is a race to the bottom in terms of cynicism and critical responses to things. Whoever is the first and the loudest with the most cynical response will generally get the most agreement and accord. It's just the nature of the way these discussions tend to take place. So I think we have to model a different form of discussion if we're going to move forward with the idea of community. And that's related to some of the other things that we're going to talk about. First of all, you'll remember number 3, leaders, committees, and bureaucracy. Well, how about we replace that with decentralized decision-making? Yes, because there is such a thing as decentralized decision-making, and there are different ways that we can understand and model that. Back in my archives, I have a discussion with the leader of the founder of the Swedish Pirate Party, which, if people don't know, it's a fascinating idea and concept that arose, and people can find out about the Pirate Bay and legal issues and all of that ultimately led to the Swedish Pirate Party coming into existence and actually having some stunning electoral success. As people may or may not know, I'm not particularly enthused about political success, but it was quite remarkable. How did this organization come about? Well, through what most people wouldn't even identify as organization is the answer. And so you can watch that interview that I had with Rick Folkvinge years ago about this idea. But essentially, if you read his book, it's fascinating that the idea of the Swedish Pirate Party was essentially hands off. It was decentralized. There was no central decision maker. Okay, now I'm going to set up this committee and you're going to lead this committee and you're going to come up with these solutions, these proposals, and then it's going to be voted on or blah, blah, blah. No, it was simply run as whoever has an idea, whatever it is. Okay, well, you want to do some sort of leaflet campaign on the streets in order to raise awareness. Okay, now you're in charge of the leaflet campaign. You're the leaflet campaign organizer. Go for it. And there's an old Chinese proverb that I'm not going to remember off the top of my head. Something about if you want to control, let go of that thing. And the idea is that the order that forms from people pursuing what they think to be the best strategy on their own will actually be surprisingly cohesive in a way that most people fail to comprehend or understand. Without leaders, without committees, without bureaucracy, without red tape, letting people do things in the way that seems natural to them, you will actually tend to have more success. It seems counterintuitive, but there are, as I say, there are demonstrable, documentable examples of how this can work. And in fact, if you do some research on decentralized decision-making, you will see it has become sort of a business meme over the past couple of decades. How can we incorporate this into our organizational structure and blah, blah, blah? Well, let's not worry about that. Let's think about how we can do it in terms of building a community that's going to achieve something in the real world. All right, moving on. As you remember, litmus tests, litmus tests, litmus tests. Everything's a litmus test. You don't wear red socks on a Friday, you're out. No, 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 no. How about drawing a line in the sand? It seems similar at first glance. This is my line in the sand, and if you cross it, then you're not going to be part of the community. I think it is important to have lines in the sand. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be things that are core values to you that define the community that you're trying to bring into existence. Of course, you have to have some sort of core value. Even if it's just simply, what is the point of this community? Why are you trying to create a community? A community about what? If there isn't truly no purpose whatsoever, then who cares? Sure, The entire world is part of my community. What does it matter? No, no, no. If you are creating a community, it must be about something. There must be some sort of core value or values that are absolutely essential that people have to be on board with. There has to be some sort of shared vision, at least for why you're doing this at all, right? So those are your lines in the sand, and those are the important essential things that you must have in place. And it could be anything, whatever. Maybe you just want a community that's based around maybe you do want it to be all about a 9/11 truth community or whatever it is, whatever you're interested in. And there may be certain lines that you have to draw in the sand with regard to that. But when you're drawing lines in the sand, you don't draw a million lines that form a maze. No, there are certain core things that are absolutely essential, and you state that clearly and upfront, and people come on board if they share that vision. But you don't make everything into a litmus test and oh my God, you must be a shill because you disagree with me on this completely unrelated subject over here. Here we are in a community garden project. We're trying to, grow food, but you disagree with me about this political thing over here or something like that. No, that's not your line in the sand in that case where you're trying to bring together a community garden, right? And I think, again, the art of being able to live with and abide with people who disagree with you it seems to be an increasingly rare phenomenon, and one that perhaps, like any muscle, we need to work and to practice. So I think drawing lines in the sand, yes. Having core values and principles that you will not compromise, yes, I'm on board with that. But making everything into a litmus test and finding any point of disagreement as a reason to cast someone out of your community, you're probably not going to have a good community, right? Okay, number 5. You'll remember that we were talking about less action, more talk. Well, how about less talk, more action? And here is an image of how Ryan Gosling rolls up his sleeves. I believe this is from GQ. So there you go. Now you know how to roll up your sleeves and get to work. Yes, this one's pretty self-explanatory, but as we know, people can talk and talk and talk and talk forever with nothing actually happening in the real world. In order to counteract that, well, how about less talk, more action? How about doing things and, sure, discussing them as you're doing them? Of course, having planning meetings or whatever you need to do in order for whatever action you're going to bring about. But the key has to be the action, not the talk. And unfortunately, that gets lost in the mix sometimes. Okay, moving on. My way or the highway? No, 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 no. How about all roads lead to Rome? This is an insight that occurred to me a while ago, and I think is incredibly simple and important. Okay, how do you add to 5, right? Well, of course, everyone knows 2 plus 3 is 5. Everyone knows 2 plus 3 is 5. And anyone who says anything differently is a complete moron, and I will absolutely fight them to the death. I mean, 4 plus 1 equals 5? Ugh, that's crazy. 1 plus 4 equals 5? 3 plus 2 equals... No, 2 plus 3 equals 5. And then there are the crazy morons who think 5 plus 0 equals 5. Or 6 plus negative 1 equals 5. What are they smoking? No, it is 2 plus 3 equals 5, and that is the only way to get to 5. Oh, wait, no, that's ludicrous. It's insane. It's stupid. No one would be like that, right? Well, maybe they would if they're trying to build a community on whatever grounds, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever project you're involved in. It can be easy to get caught up in this is the way, and this is the only way that this can possibly happen or function. And any other way I'm going to completely dismiss and reject. But other ways sometimes can actually work. And I think this comes back down to the idea of trying to micromanage what everyone is doing and how they are doing it in a centralized fashion rather than decentralized. Decentralized decision-making and action-taking is going to be messy, at least in the sense for people who want everything done a certain way and it must be done the way I imagine it being done. You're probably not going to have a good time with that attitude, but you would be surprised how many different ways there are to add to 5. So anyway, keep that in mind. There are many, many different ways to do various things. And if you're not open to that, you're probably not going to have a good time actually trying to make a community. Okay, moving on. Number 7, only respond to crises. Well, no, how about use the good times to prepare? Yes. Because, of course, unfortunately, this is something that I'm extremely intimately familiar with in the course of my work, and it's one of the most horrible and horrifying aspects of the work that I do, is that I have noticed when there is a gigantic calamity, suddenly everyone's interested in my work. And I get all sorts of new people coming to my website, and suddenly I'm much more popular than I was before because, oh my God, there's some sort of emergency going on. The roof is on fire. Wow. Okay. Oh, and this guy's talking about it. Wow. Well, let's all go, look at his work. And then things calm down, and then people just generally sort of drift away. Whatever. Doesn't matter. And then suddenly there's another crisis. Oh my God. So, for example, I remember the first time I noticed that there's this huge spike of new people who are interested in my work was the 2008 financial crisis. And here I was talking about it and ringing the alarm about it and interviewing people about it and examining it in various ways, in ways that weren't being done in the mainstream media. And suddenly there were a lot of people that were online that were discovering my work and starting to get interested in this. And, oh, what does this mean? As that crisis started to subside, at least in the minds of most people, I think it's arguably still ongoing. But at any rate, as the time of emergency started to subside, people start to sort of drift away and, oh, maybe this isn't so important and blah, blah, blah. And that happens in various ways over the years. And obviously the biggest one was the scamdemic. And suddenly, wow, everybody, I cannot explain how orders of magnitude more people were suddenly interested in my work, and I was getting a lot more attention. And of course, now that we're going back to the new normal, people are again starting to drift away and going back to their lives as usual because they got better things to do than to think about all this stuff that's going on in the world. So, yes, unfortunately, crises are the motivator for most people to actually do anything. And when there isn't a crisis in front of them, what's the point? Who cares? So, if we're thinking about this in terms of building a community, as they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? Okay, yes, of course, you should be preparing and you should have been prepared all these years ago and whatever. But at any rate, okay, now let's say, arguably we're not, but let's say we're into some sort of normal-ish time right now. At least we're not in the depths of the scamdemic lockdowns and all of that. The world isn't exactly on fire at this precise moment, depending where you live in this world. So use this moment of relative respite and whatever resources that you have to start preparing for the crises that you know are coming. And I find it extremely interesting and telling that the idea of prepping has become this kind of funny mocked part of conspiracy culture. Oh, these weird preppers, as if that is a bad thing. Oh my God, how dare you prepare for things that might happen in the future? And guess what? If you prepare for things, some crisis that may or may not come in the future, and it doesn't come, well, guess what? You're still prepared, and you're still, it's not like you've invested in something that isn't valuable. You've invested in building something. And if we apply that in the context of community, then clearly the idea of building a community that's maybe a community that's based on, okay, it's an emergency watch thing. I live in a very earthquake, volcano, typhoon prone country. Maybe just having a sort of an emergency watch with neighbors or people in your community. Okay, if something goes wrong, then we'll know that, we have supplies here and people can meet here and that kind of thing. Maybe it could be something as simple as that. But that can then be parlayed into, okay, well, we're not dealing with an emergency today, but maybe we can use this community to, whatever the case may be, start that community garden or whatever project that you're interested in working on and building up from there. Because clearly times of crises bring a lot of attention, a lot of focus and a lot of energy. But that attention and focus and energy needs to A, be there before, and B, be there not simply in service of the crises, because that is the way that we're being led into the maws of the bear trap of the New World Order, or whatever they're calling it this week, the Great Reset, what have you. That is based on this idea that crisis and emergency is going to lead us, push us in a certain direction. But we cannot be pushed in a certain direction if we are prepared and if we are already building beyond whatever crises they're trying to bring about. All right. The next idea, as you recall, pester that one friend who disagrees with you, and make sure that that one person, your sister or whoever it is in your life, this person has to be part of this community, and they have to believe what I believe, and they have to. That's if you. I understand that urge and that impetus, and that is one of the most common forms of feedback that I get in the work that I do. Is, man, my wife doesn't see eye to eye with me on these things, or I tried bringing this information to my son and he just won't take it, or I have this friend or coworker or whoever it is that you're trying to bring this information to, you're trying to convince them of this or that other thing, and it can be extremely frustrating, and I understand that, but that is because unfortunately you can lead the horse to water, but you cannot make them think, right? So unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to wake another person up other than to put the information that you think is important in front of them, to listen and respond to what they might have to say about that information. Because let's also keep in mind, hey, I don't know about you, but I've been wrong about things in the past. Maybe I'm wrong about this thing. I'm willing to listen, especially if it's someone that I love and care about, a friend, a loved one, a family member. I'm going to listen to what they have to say and attempt to respond to that in a real way, not just reflexively. No, you have to believe what I believe. So, but taking that on board and thinking about that in the context of building a community, you have to build community with the people who will share those core values, those lines in the sand, this is what this community is about, this is the vision that I have for this community. And there will be people who will share that vision with you and will be excited about that. And it is a more fruitful use of your time to be working with those people rather than trying endlessly to pester that one person that just won't be on board with you. And I think part of what goes on with regards to these types of groups is the concept of social validation. Whether you like it or dislike it, I think it is a part of human nature and who we are, is that when people see that there are people over there that are doing something together and are building something and bringing it into the real world and manifesting whatever it is that they're trying to do, I think that's naturally attractive to most people. Hey, wow, that's cool. Look at what those people are doing. And that is a bajillion time better value proposition to that potential holdout who just won't listen to you. Do something, build something, bring something into the world and say, hey, look, see what we're doing over here. And as you can see in the group dynamic in the picture here, yeah, that one person who's being left out of that discussion is probably going to feel awkward at some point. And when you have a thriving, wonderful community that is bustling with energy and is doing things in the real world, that person is going to be much more interested in coming to you to ask to join your community rather than you having to pester them. So anyway, I think that's probably a more fruitful way forward. Let's move on. Number 9, you'll remember, if it's tough, it's not worth doing, right? Oh my God, it's so hard to do this thing. Well, let's counter that. Here's an inside joke between me and my video editor, Brock West. Whenever we're working on something and we've reached some sort of impasse, or we're trying to, I'm like, no, that doesn't quite look right. Let's try it this way. Let's do that. At some point, I will generally say to Brock, look, we're not painting the Sistine Chapel here. Let's just get it done. And I think it is important to have that understanding and that attitude sometimes, especially when you are working on something positive, something solutions-based, building a community or whatever the case may be, when it can be easy to see the million ways that this can go wrong. And you know what? 99 times out of 100, you're going to be right. It is going to go wrong. There is some problem that's going to happen. It's not going to work out in the long run, whatever the case may be. But that doesn't mean that it's not valuable to do it at all. Just because it doesn't work 100%, it doesn't work right out of the box, and it's not 100% going to last for the rest of human history, doesn't mean that it's not valuable to do. It can still be a valuable thing to do. And in the context of a community, I mean, again, like whatever it is, I talked to Thomas Freeman about a community project. People can look it up on my site. I had an interview with him years and years and years ago about the Ozark Neighborly Exchange, which was just this local community sort of action group that was put together. It was kind of a community thing in which people in the local area would come together. I think it was, one Tuesday a month or whatever it was, and they would work on some sort of project in the community that needed doing. Oh, this guy needs his barn rebuilt. Okay, let's work on that project. Or, oh, somebody's going to teach glass blowing or whatever it is. And they structured a sort of community organization around that. And so I talked to Thomas Freeman about that years ago. And then years later, I followed up with him, and he shared the story of how, well, yeah, it worked and it was good for a number of years, but then the kind of go-getter, the spark that was kind of the driving force behind it, he moved out of the community, and eventually the neighborly exchange sort of started to slow down and fall apart, and it's kind of in disrepair at this point. And yeah, that absolutely happens. Sometimes you will have a community that is based on that person who brings things together and makes them happen in the real world, and then that person leaves or dies or whatever the case may be, and suddenly everything kind of falls apart. Does that mean it wasn't valuable to do it in the first place? Does that mean that all of the things that were actually accomplished by that community are worthless because it didn't last forever and it wasn't perfect? Or is it just an example of, hey, that's how we actually came together and did things, and that might be the inspiration for someone else to do something else, right? Another example of that I can think of, the Ithaca Hours is a community currency that I talked about, and I interviewed the guy who set it up, Paul Glover. I'm going off the top of my head, so please look that up on my site. But anyway, he started a community currency that became extremely popular, and there was a lot of Ithaca Hours. It was an hours-based, time-based banking system that really took off in Ithaca 20 years ago, I want to say, something along those lines, 25 years ago maybe, and was circulating through the community. It was a valid form of currency that people were using, and ultimately Paul Glover, or whoever this guy's name was, he ended up leaving the community. I believe he passed away a few years ago, and at this point, Ithaca Hours, I think most people in Ithaca will vaguely know of it, but I don't think it's a going concern anymore. Again, does that mean that the entire project was worthless? Or is it just an example of something that can be done? And yes, there has to be constant input of energy into it. But at any rate, you're not painting the Sistine Chapel. It doesn't have to be perfect and wonderful and the most unassailable thing in all of human history. It doesn't have to be this great work of art. It just has to function, to do the thing that you want it to do for the time that you want to do it. Oh, you want to bring people together in a community around this idea, around this project. And hey, we got that project done. We didn't get this other project done. Oh, well, try again. That's, I think, the point. The only time you really lose is when you give up altogether. So keep going. And yes, it will be tough. And yes, more often than not, things won't work out. But that doesn't mean that it's not worth trying. Okay, and finally, you'll remember that don't trust me, bro. Sorry, trust me, bro. Oops, I spoiled the punchline. No, of course, don't trust me, bro. I'm no person floating on a cloud's guru telling you what to do. And perhaps you disagree with some of the things that I've said today, or all of the things that I've said today, or maybe you have your own idea of how things should work. Well, okay, your way or the highway. Sure, why not? Don't take my word for it. Hey, look, I mean, what thriving community have I built? So, trust my ability to talk about these things to your own to your own detriment potentially. But at any rate, okay, take people's advice and ideas and things on board, but it has to come from you, and you have to ultimately be the arbiter of whatever kind of community you're going to put together, and it has to be based on your principles. So at the very least, yeah, don't trust me, don't take my word for it, don't simply believe what I'm saying, but maybe it would be good to actually list out your own 10 ideas of things that you think are important for building a community, and seeing and testing those, and maybe through the crucible of reality and experience, you can forge a path forward for testing and refining and revising those 10 principles that you think are important and building community around that. And once again, it may be a process of failure, of testing and failure and testing and failure and testing and failure until you find something that does work, and maybe it won't work forever. And you know what? Maybe that's okay too. Now, having said that, I think there are, I mean, yeah, don't trust me or any other source or someone who's coming along telling you what to do and how to do it, but at least take on board what they have to say, right? What's the harm in that? At least verify and look into these sorts of things. I think research and finding out what others have done and what they say is actually really important and can be a valuable part of putting together that idea and manifesting it in the real world. Now, I gave an example in my Solutions Watch episode on building communities of a book, and man, I should I should have that reference for you. I do not. So you're going to have to go to corbettreport.com and look up my Building Community Solutions Watch, where I talked about this book that was about how to build communities on a granular level. There was all sorts of information and details, and even examples of legal documents of how to purchase land and how to put it into a community trust and these sorts of things. It was really very detailed. But one of the things that they stressed in that book was, you know what? Most of the time, most communities are going to fail. So be prepared for that. Be aware of this fact that there are very few examples of communities that are there for all time and will forever be okay. So at any rate, I think that is something to keep in mind. You can, yeah, of course, you can look and consult and read books and listen to talks and do all these, go to workshops about how to build a community. Sure, great. And take all of that advice on board. But ultimately, it has to come from you. And if you don't have that vision, and if you don't have that burning desire, how are you going to possibly bring together a community based on that? Anyway, I'm probably not telling anyone in this audience something that they don't already know, but I think sometimes it is important to articulate these things in ways that brings this forward and starts to crystallize how this actually functions in the real world, not in the digital world, because building a digital community may actually be your goal. And if it is, then sure, keep that in mind. But for those of people who are interested in building a real community in the real world, I think these are some things that you should be able to keep in mind to proceed forward with that. Having said that, I think that's going to do it for today. And if anyone has any questions or ideas, I'm at corbettreport.com, CORBETT report.com. And I hope people will share their feedback on this with me.
Make some noise for James, everybody. Keep going. Make some noise for James. Let him feel the love. Let him feel the love. We want to get him here next year in person. Thank you for that, James. We appreciate you coming in all the way from Japan. All right, guys. 5 days. It's about to come to an end. Or actually, it's going to come to an end this evening. Who's going to come to the concert tonight and party with all of us? Hey, even if you've been taking it early the rest of the night, this is maybe your last night here. Come hang out here. Free concert in this room, 7 to 11 p.m. And comedy. Don't forget the comedy. This guy's going to have you cracking up. All right, look, you're just losing stuff all over the place. Now I've got this. Is this anybody's? What is it? It's a little bracelet. I'll take it. Come find me at the desk if you know who this belongs to. Also, somebody's still missing their glasses, their colorful glasses. One other announcement. So I just want to, all of you who have workshops have come up to me and announced your workshop. So I'm just going to say this, guys, there's workshops happening tonight and tomorrow. For those of you who are still sticking around, there's going to be workshops happening here in this space, not inside, but outside, Monday and Tuesday at least. We're going to the pyramids on Tuesday as well. And one of the workshops, I just want to mention it specifically because I know most of our workshops, unfortunately, haven't been translated. You know, we have this content translated. We're going to work on that next year. We're going to try to get more, see if we can get our translators to come sit in some of the workshops or get other interpreters so that those who only speak Spanish can get all of the content that they want, right? So we're going to make that effort. And thank you. And one of the workshops that is available in English and Spanish is happening tomorrow in the Green Space at 11 a.m. It's called The Wisdom of the Children, and it sounds like it'd be really interesting for many of you out here. So in English and Spanish, if you're interested, 11 a.m. tomorrow in the Green Space. But just check out thegreaterreset.org/workshops to see the rest of the offerings we have. All right. We're going to, in just a moment, our last presenter, who unfortunately is not in person as well. Who's familiar with Mark Passio? Make some noise if you know Mark's work. And for the rest of you who don't know Mark, let me just prepare you a little bit. Mark is a brilliant researcher. Mark Passio has been researching the occult, which means hidden, some of the hidden teachings, which are a big part of our movement. You know, we've talked on a lot of topics over the last 5 days, but I invite you, as an additional piece of content, if you go to theconsciousresistance.com and you search Mark Passio, you will find an interview Mark and I did, and in that interview, Mark says that he thinks one of the biggest missing pieces of the freedom movement is that people are blind to the occult influence in our world, and that's, you know, a topic for another day. But if that's outside of your worldview, I encourage you to go to whatonearthishappening.com and start with Mark's podcast. Start at number 1 and see how far you can get. And the reason I preface that is Mark has a very specific way of communicating. Mark and I are very much like kindred souls. We get along great. We share the exact same message in many ways. I have a more soft way to communicate it. Mark is a bit more blunt, what I think is sometimes necessary. You know, I think people sometimes in our community mistake spirituality and compassion for weakness. I like to tell people that, like, being honest, like, sometimes compassion has to come in a blunt form. You know, sometimes being honest and being compassionate with somebody is saying, you're fucking up and you need to get your shit together. And that's kind of the way Mark comes at this. So I just want to prepare everybody that if Mark's tone feels aggressive, that's fine if you feel that way. Of course, you're welcome to feel how you will. But just know that he truly is coming from a place of wanting this movement that we have built to succeed. And so he hits you with the hard truths. And his talk today is called Why the Freedom Movement is Failing. Now, from Mark's perspective, I think if he came here, he would have maybe a different perspective and get to meet all of you and be like, okay, maybe things aren't as bleak as it might seem from home. But he is still going to be dropping some cold, hard truths. Unfortunately, Mark couldn't be live with us right now, so this is a pre-recorded presentation, but it's never been seen before anywhere else. It's exclusively for you guys here and for those who are watching online. So we got that queued up, ready to go? All right, everybody, this is Mark Passio and Why the Freedom Movement is Failing.
Welcome one and all. I'm Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com. It's a pleasure to be here today to present at the great. Welcome one and all. I'm Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com. It's a pleasure to be here today to present at the Greater Reset 5. Thank you to Derek and John for inviting me to speak, and to all the other great organizers of this event for hosting it. My presentation today is entitled, Why We're Losing: 7 Reasons the Freedom Movement is Failing. And a lot of people kind of tend to get on me for being so tough on people within the freedom movement, especially. And I want to tell people today that I'm going to go over some very specific reasons why I am. And hopefully by the end of the presentation, people will more fully understand, if they truly, really listen to what I'm saying here, why we have not, as a species, made much progress and much movement toward true human freedom. So let's jump into the presentation. As always, I start my presentations with some basic caveats and warnings. The first is always that there is nothing new that you will be seeing here today. As the ancient saying goes, there is nothing new under the sun. Number one, this means that things have not changed and there has not been any real new progress in the human condition. It has remained the same over the centuries. The phrase nothing new under the sun also means that the truth has always been here and it will always be here. It's eternal. It is something that just simply needs to be fully recognized, that it is the way things are and that it has always been like that. Once that is recognized, then maybe we can make some progress and change things and create something new. But all I can really do is present what I'm going to present in a personalized framework with my own style and my own aesthetics applied. The information itself is pretty much something that has always been with us. So a lot of people say, oh, I'm not hearing anything new here. Well, you're not going to hear anything new. Until humanity grows up and makes some progress in consciousness and frees itself from the condition of slavery, there's not going to be much new here on this planet. It's basically the same thing all the time. So people have to understand that and not expect this to be some news show or some form of entertainment in which they're always being hit with something brand new. This is something that, while ancient, has still not been learned and integrated by the human species, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in regarding human freedom. The second thing I always tell people in my presentations is feel free to get as offended as you like by anything I'm about to say. This presentation is for psychologically mature adults who are ready and able to hear factual information and truth. It is not for those who appear to be adults bodily, but who still have the psychological mentation of a child, meaning those who attempt to think and reason with their emotions. As soon as they hear something that rubs them the wrong way, they say, oh, that must be disinformation. That can't be true. I can't accept that. I can't entertain that notion. And real intelligence is being able to look at something from an objective standpoint, getting your emotions out of the way, and neither accepting it immediately nor rejecting it immediately. That's where real intelligence begins. So, don't be the little kid who puts his hand over his ears because his feelings are hurt by truth that someone's telling him. I've been putting this phrase in some of my recent presentations. If you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. But if you are absolutely determined to learn, no one can stop you. And that's the attitude that people in the freedom movement really have to take more, that they don't have all the information that they need. And they need to hear things that remove them from their comfort zone, from the things that they think they already know and they don't need to know anymore. I encounter this continually in the freedom movement, that people think they have all the information that they need when they absolutely do not. So, if you do hear some things that, ruffle your feathers a little bit, step back, attempt to calm your emotions, and think about whether the statement is true or not regarding how it applies to the human condition and the freedom movement in particular. I'm very hard on the freedom movement for very good reasons. These are people who should know better. These are people who should be making more progress in their understanding. And very unfortunately, I see very, very little of that, even within the freedom-oriented movement. People who are, saying that they recognize the loss of human freedom and the encroachment of tyranny in our world. And yet they really don't identify the true underlying causal factors. And I'm tough on those people because to tell them that they're doing better than they actually are does them a disservice. It is setting them up for further failure in the future instead of being honest with them and telling them you're nowhere near the correct answers. You're not helping to influence and change other people's thinking and consciousness. And that's the number one reason why the movement is not going to make any progress now or in the future, for that matter. So the principle here is that you do a grave disservice to someone else by telling them that their performance toward a certain goal in any particular endeavor is better than it actually is. It is far better to tell someone the truth about their poor performance in an endeavor toward their goal and hurt their feelings even, if that becomes necessary, rather than to lie to them and hurt their future chance for success. And this is one of the main reasons that I'm as tough as I am on people in the freedom movement. If you had Olympic athletes training for a track and field event, and the person that you're training or the people you're training, their times in their particular event are terrible, and there's no way they're going to win a medal with that kind of performance, and you tell them, oh, it's fine, you're going to take the gold medal or the silver medal in the Olympic Games, you're not helping them. You're not helping them to do better. You're not helping them to train even at a higher level than they need to in order to reach peak performance, in order to do well toward their goal, which is to win a medal in an Olympic sport. If you tell them they're better than they are, that's an absolute disservice to them. And that's the main reason that I'm as harsh as I am on the freedom movement in particular, as I said. So keep that in mind. That's the reason that I generally make presentations that are telling people something that is very negative and something that is being honest with them about where their actual performance is. Because if you say you want the result, if you say you want true freedom, then you have to meet the requirements in order to gain it. And the requirements are not what most people think that they are. They're not coming up with a new system. They're not inventing some new technology or, creating some new system of organization or making some new cryptocurrency or any number of other things. The way that we are going to get ourselves out of the mess that we are in regarding the destruction of human freedom is to completely change the way we think, first and foremost, and then to influence other people to change the way that they think. Thought is what is creating our reality. Thoughts lead to behaviors, and behaviors lead to situations in the world. And the deplorable nature of human behavior and the deplorable nature of the human situation right now is due to the way the vast majority of human beings continue to think. So let's look at that dynamic for a moment. It's a fact, not my personal opinion, that we are definitely losing this battle for freedom. We are not winning it. It is getting worse. And the people within the freedom movement don't really know how to push the envelope forward. They don't know how to move the ball down the field. They don't know how to climb the mountain. They are continuing to think and do things that do not lead to the result that they say that they want. And the evidence of that is that tyranny is continuing. If they were doing the things that were required and they were moving the ball down the field, then freedom would be increasing and we wouldn't be going deeper into tyranny. However, that's not the case. It's objectively observable and measurable. It's not a matter of my opinion. It's fact that we are not winning this battle. People will say, oh, people are waking up, but what's really changed? Nothing has changed. We are still enslaved. That's the human condition, is covert slavery, is slavery through mind control, through the control of how people think and the suppression of their consciousness. And the overwhelming vast majority of people within the so-called freedom movement do not know at all how to get to their goal because they don't understand the governing dynamics of the problem that they face. They don't understand the thing that actually governs the condition of whether an entire species is free or enslaved. And this means that the freedom movement have no true orientation with respect to their stated goal. They don't know where the top of the mountain is, let alone how to get there. Okay? And without such orientation, success toward the goal of true freedom is absolutely impossible. And most people won't tell people this. If they even know it, most people don't know it. And even if they did, they won't tell this to people because they don't want to be looked at as, oh, you're just negative, you're a doomsayer. I'm none of those things. I'm a realist. I'm trying to explain to people how a science works and get them to understand how that works and then align their behavior to that governing dynamic. And it's been one of the most challenging and difficult, or some would describe it as next to impossible things, because you're dealing with so many hard-headed people that are attached to their belief systems. And I've, made no bones about the fact that I'm very angry and bitter at how things are going, and I'm not happy with the progress of this movement, and I'm really not happy with the way that the people within this movement are dealing with it, treating it, not adjusting to what they need to adjust to understand what they need to understand. They want to stay in the same way of thought, in the same mentation, and believe that the problem can somehow work itself out, or that they don't have to change the way that they think, and they can still receive the positive benefits and get to the goal that they're trying to get to. And I'm here to tell people that reality simply does not function that way. The laws of nature don't work that way. People have to change the way they think in order for them to change the situation. And not only do they have to change the way they think, they have to influence other people toward that same corrective measure in thinking. So this is where I consider that my work differs within the freedom movement greatly from just about any other teacher, just about any other influencer, just about any other person who is trying to work toward true freedom, because I'm talking about the underlying causal dynamics in thought, the causal factors in human thought that have put us in our situation, and what really needs to be understood and changed in thought if we're going to get out of the situation of enslavement that we are in and reach the goal of true freedom. So my work correctly identifies the underlying governing dynamics and causal factors which affect human freedom on a mass scale. Most others within the so-called freedom movement only cursorily examine such factors, or they ignore them altogether. Then they wonder why the freedom movement makes such little progress, or even no progress, no appreciable or recognizable progress over all these years. I tell people the freedom movement was doing far better back in the early 2000s than it is now, shortly after 9/11 occurred and shook a lot of people up to ask a lot of questions. It's been largely shut down to a large degree in modern years, in recent years. So my work is that missing piece of the puzzle that will help people actually get to the goal, if they pay attention and really hear what's being said and don't try to interject what they think I'm saying. And without that piece of the puzzle, without those several missing pieces of the puzzle actually, they're not going to be able to truly put the picture together and attain the goal that they say that they seek. And say that that's arrogant, say that, that's a lot of hubris for saying that you have the answer. You could say whatever you want, but I'm still correct regarding what I'm about to say. And I've been correct regarding these causal dynamics, and very, very, very few people really take the time to listen and understand. Because if they did, they would really, truly realize what's missing in their thought process, what's missing in their understanding, and how people can really get to the goal that they say that they want. Obviously, in a short form presentation like this, I'm not going to be able to get to all of those things. We're going to limit this to a very small, number of items that I want to cover briefly. So for the totality of my work, you can go to my website, whatonearthishappening.com, and you could listen to my podcast series from the very beginning episode in order at your own pace, and then watch my videos and presentations, and you'll get a very good, solid, big picture view of what is really taking place here on planet Earth and how we can extricate ourselves from the human condition of slavery. The 7 factors I'm going to talk about really all deal with the way people still do not understand governing dynamics, the way that their thought process is still in a very underdeveloped state regarding where it needs to get to understand the nature of the problem and how to get out of it, and lack of action in many ways that they are not taking. And they are doing actions that they think are going to help, which are never going to help until other foundations are laid. So the very first thing that is the main reason the freedom movement is failing is that the overwhelming majority of the people within the freedom movement still to this day remain ignorant of natural law and how it works. And this is the main governing dynamic. So what is natural law? Natural law is a set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of the behaviors of beings with the capacity for understanding the difference between harmful behavior and non-harmful behavior. Yes, that's a mouthful as a working definition for a governing dynamic in nature. But let's just briefly break that down. It's universal. It exists everywhere in the universe. It's inherent. That means it's part of nature. It's not a constructural idea of the human mind. It's part of nature itself. It's objective. That means it is not subject to human interpretation. It exists independently of how anyone thinks about it. It's non-man-made. That's pretty self-evident. What that means, it means it comes from nature, not from humanity. It's eternal. It will never not exist. It exists for as long as the universe exists. It's immutable. That means it cannot be changed. These conditions are unchangeable by anything humanity is capable of doing or any other being or situation. It does not make a difference what is done. These conditions remain in effect. And they govern the consequences of our behavior. That's what I mean by governing dynamics. We behave, we have free will to behave, and we can choose our behaviors, but we are not insulated from the consequences of our behavior. And these governing dynamics, these natural laws, affect and bind those that have the capacity for understanding the difference between right and wrong. They do not apply to the animals. They apply to beings that are human and higher level intelligence than human. Meaning you have to have the capacity in the mind for the definitive understanding between behaviors that are rights and between behaviors that are wrongs, wrongdoings that violate human rights. So the understanding of natural law is all centered upon bringing human conscience, that's the knowledge of the difference between right and wrong, into alignment with objective morality. That's actually choosing right behavior over wrong behavior. And we're not talking about religion here. This is absolutely non-religious. This has nothing to do with religion. This is a science of nature. It's a science of behavior and the consequence of behavior, and the science of how the dynamics of freedom and tyranny actually work in nature. This constitutes a science that is, as of yet, unknown by humanity, not in its fullness. Some people have an inkling of it. Some people know more about how it works than others. But as a species, we remain almost completely ignorant regarding natural law, and that's why we're still enslaved. Conscience is the definitive knowledge of which behaviors are rights because they do not initiate harm to other sentient beings, and which behaviors are wrong because they do initiate harm to other sentient beings. That's the real, definable, objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. It is not a guess. It is not something that you find in a religious text. It is not something that we invent. It's not a constructural idea of the mind. When we behave and harm results in the natural world, then that is a wrongdoing. If we behave and harm is not initiated in the natural world, that action is a right. That's actually very simple. if people get their clouded and previously distorted thinking out of their head, because they're running mind viruses. And mind viruses prevent people from understanding real governing dynamics, especially natural law. The fundamental nature of humanity's continued loss of freedom is that most human beings do not have a full and accurate understanding of objective morality, the true and actual difference between right behavior and wrong behavior in nature/reality. Ignorance of true morality leads human beings to erroneously believe that violent and harmful behaviors based upon the belief in authority are somehow morally legitimate and acceptable when they are absolutely not morally legitimate at all. The belief in authority comes out of people's ignorance of natural law. There is no such thing as human authority. Never has been, never will be. Doesn't exist now, never will exist. Has never existed. There is a claim, an immoral, violent claim of authority that holds people in duress for disobeying the ruling class's decrees that they call law. And all that is a usurpation of natural law. It's a usurpation of the laws of the universe, of the creator of the universe. And that's what these people in so-called power, in earthly, worldly power, want. They want to usurp the laws of nature and become God. That's what Satanism is. That's what dark occultism is, which is we're going to get to in a moment. As a result of people's complete lack of understanding of objective morality and their belief in human authority, many, many behaviors which most human beings conduct and condone are completely out of alignment with natural law, which leads to the continuation and furtherance of human slavery. It leads to the creation of slavery, it leads to the continuation of slavery, and it leads to slavery becoming deeper and deeper bondage. This dynamic is expressed in the natural law of freedom. And the law of freedom states that as morality and aggregate morality and aggregate freedom are directly proportional to each other. So the total morality of the population of human beings is going to be completely proportional to the total freedom of human beings. So what does that say about how moral human beings are? If they're completely proportional degrees and humanity is enslaved, then their aggregate behavior cannot be very moral. When we add it all up, and all the human beings add up, if we place like a little index on their behavior of how moral it is from a scale of 1 to 100 and added up everybody's moral index in the whole world, it would be pretty damn low. When it comes to not really understanding the true objective difference between rights and wrongs. And that's the problem. That boils it down to the very simple dynamic is that most people don't know the difference between right and wrong still to this day. And they're not being taught the difference. Here is the law of freedom stated as simply as it can be stated. The aggregate freedom of human beings is directly proportional to the aggregate morality of their behavior. That's it. It's that simple. And most people still don't understand that on this planet. And once again, I'm one of the only people really repeating this over and over and saying it to people and telling people you need to understand this, you need to communicate this, you need to teach this to others. And yet, hardly anybody even mentions the word morality in the freedom movement. Very few. Very few. You hear podcasts and, video shows and people writing books and all of the information you could gather. Everybody's just talking about the plane of effects. They're talking about the 3D happenings. They're talking about what new technology or system can we put into effect? How can we reform this existing thing? They don't understand what needs to be torn down and completely dismantled and decimated is wrong thought. And what really needs to be integrated and understood is true governing dynamics and how they work in nature. And you hear so few people talking about any of that. And that's why the freedom movement's failing. It's the number one reason. Reason number two the freedom movement is failing is the freedom movement as a whole does not understand the world of the occult and is not making any progress toward its understanding. Very, very, very few people have an accurate understanding of what occultism is and what, in particular, dark occultism is. Now, I'm not here today to explain the entirety of the occult. That's impossible in such a short time. But I just want to talk about what dark occultism is, because that's what really has a stranglehold and is injecting all of the mind viruses that people believe and continue to accept as true into human society, which prevents them from an understanding of natural law. So one of the things that's been the most difficult for me to explain to people is what Satanism really is versus what it is not. Satanism is not the worship of the Christian devil in Christian mythos. Sorry to burst anyone's bubble, but if you believe that, you have a child's mentality regarding what Satanism really is. And it's sad, and it really should be improved. It's unacceptable, quite frankly. What Satanism really is an ancient occult religion, and occult simply means hidden. So when you hear the word occult, if you're triggered by it, then that means there's more ignorance present. Everybody in this movement should understand by this point that occult means hidden. It means it's hidden from the sight of the average human being. That's what Satanism is, a religion that the true masters of the world do not want the average dolt in our society to understand. Because if they really understand that, then they understand their master's mindset and techniques. And they don't want that getting out to the public. They want them believing that it's just devil worship. So Satanism is an ancient occult religion comprised of diverse and interconnected networks of worldwide adherents. It is not just rich white men. It is a very diverse group of ancient master psychologists that are manipulating the entire body of humanity. At its ideological core, this religion postulates that knowledge of how the human psyche works and operates, and knowledge of how the laws of the universe work and operate, should actually be hidden. They should be occulted. They should be kept only by this priest class, by a small group of manipulators. And then, when they have a knowledge differential because they hold the knowledge and other people are ignorant of it, they can create a power differential in the world over the people who are still remaining ignorant of that very critical knowledge about how the most important things in life actually work. It is far more accurate to perceive dark occultists in general as mass psychologists and mass psychological manipulators and social engineers. Psychological manipulators and social engineers who do this dark mental manipulation and dark mental sorcery upon the entire population to give them wrong ideas that they can continue to pursue, which will never lead them anywhere. It gets them treading on the hamster wheel endlessly. So this social engineer ruling class hold and wield hidden or occult information in ways which will exploit and enslave the ignorant masses. And they've been doing this since time immemorial, and they've been using the same techniques, and there's no indication that they need to change their techniques or that their hold on humanity will slip or fade, because we still have the same level of ignorance in our society in the general population, the same level of ignorance regarding natural law and the world of the occult. And I see no major progress being made by the freedom movement to narrow the gap in that knowledge gap. Very little, too little progress toward that goal is being made. Reason number 3 the freedom movement is failing is most people within this movement constantly try to pass the buck to someone else. And they say that's someone else's responsibility. Most people within the freedom movement believe that it is not their own personal responsibility to become an influencer and teacher of others. This is the main responsibility that they want to shirk. They want to be the person in the audience eternally. They don't want to move their level of knowledge to such a degree and an extent that they truly can teach other people objective morality and natural law and how occultism really works. They incorrectly believe and insist that this responsibility and burden falls to others, but it is not theirs. How many people pat me on the back endlessly? You're doing such a great job. Your presentations are awesome, Mark. I learned a lot from you. And then I turn around and say, well, what are you doing? Oh, nothing right now. Because deep down inside their mind, they're running a mental virus program that says to them, that's someone else's job. That's not for me, that's for them. I see it all the time, I hear it all the time. Most people sit on the sidelines and observe the battle for freedom taking place as if they were watching it on a screen, instead of engaging it with active participation themselves. Then, when nothing changes, they feel they have a right to complain when the battle for freedom is going poorly. And it is going poorly. Through their own inaction and refusal to own their personal responsibility to become involved, they are literally causing freedom to be destroyed at an even faster rate. Let me say that again for people really listen to what I'm saying here. By this refusal to accept their own responsibility to get involved in the battle, when they're still sitting on the sidelines and saying, that's not for me, that's for someone else to do. That's someone else's job, not mine. They are literally causing freedom to be destroyed at a faster rate for us and for all future generations of humanity. And yeah, that's being tough on people. And get as offended as you like, because that's exactly the truth. If you're not actively involved and you're not actively influencing other people to change their thoughts, and let's get it straight, you got to get your own mental viruses out of the way, and you got to get your own thoughts straight about governing dynamics and how they work. If you haven't done that, and then you haven't begun to influence other people, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. You are actually part of the problem that is causing freedom to be continuously destroyed. Get as offended about it as you like. It's still going to be true. Number 4, the fourth reason the freedom movement is failing is most people within this movement have a perpetual desire to stay in their comfort zone. This is very connected with reason number 3. Most people within the freedom movement do not want to take any risk. They don't want to make any sacrifices. I did a whole presentation at a former event for conscious resistance that was all about the lack of people's willingness to make sacrifices of themselves and their time and their resources and their energy within this movement. Most people don't want to take any risk, make any sacrifices. They don't want to endure any hardships. They don't want to contribute any time, effort, or resources, or put any skin in the game in any way. They want to show up like it's some social event, and they want to listen to what other people have to say. And that's just not going to cut it. It's not going to get it done. Action is required. Most people within the freedom movement act as armchair quarterbacks, remaining in their own personal comfort zone while cheering on those who are actually doing the hard work to move the ball forward. Most people in this movement feel that if they become further involved in the war for freedom, that they would, quote unquote, have something to lose. You know, it would affect them negatively in some way. That's why most people sit on the sidelines, because of cowardice. And in fact, this attitude that, hey, well, I have something to lose. I can't speak out. I can't get involved. You know what that really means, that attitude? It means you've already lost. You've contributed to the losing dynamic. And that's one of the reasons why we're losing. We are not beating the social engineers. We are not beating the ruling class. We are not beating the dark occultists. We are getting our ass handed to us. We're getting clobbered. We're getting absolutely slaughtered. in this battle. It's not even close. It's a joke. They know it. They think that it's a joke. They know that it's a joke. And so do I. And it's because of these types of attitudes. Not learning the important causal dynamics. Constantly thinking something that is not the solution is the solution. Not understanding the true difference between right and wrong. How many people within this movement I hear still taking a total attitude of religiosity when it comes to the difference between right and wrong. They think the answers to right and wrong are going to be found in a book, in some religious text. The answers of what really constitute the difference between right and wrong are written on the human heart, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the problem, is people aren't in touch with that dynamic. You know, that's why they don't have a lot of courage. They got no heart in the game. They got no skin in the game. They got no heart in the game. They don't have their guts in the game. And most of them don't have their mind in the game either. And you add up all those failures, it adds up to a failure in the aggregate sense. The job that has been done has been inefficient, has been inadequate. It's not good enough. And I'm going to keep saying that to people until it starts to become somewhat decent. Our efforts have been horrific in the last decade to decade and a half. Horrific. And that's why this movement is largely falling apart and not making progress forward. Part of it is reason number 5, the mindset of I'm not blank enough. And you could fill this in with a million different things. Let's just look at some of them briefly. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not motivated enough. I'm not courageous enough. I'm not young enough. I hear this one. That's for younger people to get involved with and make that kind of effort. I don't have enough time. There's not enough time for me to learn all that stuff. There's not enough time for me to learn the technology that I need to learn to go and influence other people and put that out into the world through media. I don't have enough resources to do those things. This whole attitude that you're not sufficient and not enough. That's why it's playing out and manifesting as a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's coming out as an effort that's not enough, that's not good enough. It's because of people's thought that they're not good enough. People are good enough to do that. For some reason, because of self-loathing that's deeply nested in their psyche, they're not beginning and saying, I can't be that influencer, I can't be that person, I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, guess what? Like the old saying goes in the law of attraction, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way, you're right. That's the problem. Mental viruses telling people to tell themselves, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough to get involved and do this. Oh, they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough equipment, they don't know where to begin. How many times I've heard this from people? I don't know where to start. Start where you're at. Start by acknowledging what is. How about just start with the very simple thing? Start with where you're at, start with what is true, start with where you know you want to go and the factors that actually get you there. That's where you start. You got to get out of the mindset that this is going to be there's going to be some political solution. You got to get out of the mindset there's going to be some financial solution. You even got to get out of the mindset there's going to be some technological solution. Technology is a component to the solution, but it's not the totality of it. Once you get your mindset straight, you got to influence other people, and the mechanism for that influence is modern day technology and media. But one thing for sure is we got to get out of this dejected mindset of we can't. I'm not telling people we can't. I'm telling people up to this point, you've done a terrible job at moving toward your stated goal. That doesn't mean you can't do it. Don't mishear what I'm saying and think I'm telling you you can't do it. I'm telling people the exact opposite. You absolutely can do it. You just haven't been doing it. There's a big difference between telling somebody the job that you have been doing is completely inadequate to the attainment of the goal versus telling them You can't do it. It's impossible. I've never said that once, ever. In my entire broadcasting career, in my entire presenting career, I have never told people it is an impossibility to achieve the goal of true freedom, because I know that it is. I just know it has certain requirements, and other people don't understand those requirements because they don't understand the governing dynamics of how freedom actually works or is destroyed in the world. Once they understand those dynamics, it is absolutely possible for them to make real, true, lasting, positive change. I'm not black-pilled, folks. I'm just very dejected over how poorly our performance has been in this battle. That doesn't, black-pilled means you think it's impossible. I wouldn't be talking to anybody if I thought it was impossible. Number 6, the 6th reason the freedom movement is currently failing, and one of the biggest, is people within this movement are constantly making endless excuses for the evil behavior of others. And mostly the people who I'm talking about are the order followers of our world, to a large extent. The police, the military, even people within the medical, educational, business establishments, they're order followers to a large extent. But the biggest order followers of the world are absolutely police and military. And they're the people who are actually manifesting what I refer to as the dark New World Order of slavery. We can have a positive New World Order of true freedom and true responsibility and truly treating people with respect according to their natural rights. That is possible. But right now, the people who are building and creating the dark New World Order of total enslavement are the police and the military. And if you're offended by that statement, get as offended as you like and recognize that it's an indicator that you absolutely don't understand the dynamic, that you need to. I hear people all the time saying, these people have families to feed. They have, personal responsibilities in life that they have to meet. And people depend on them, and they're a core member of a family unit. And making excuses for them destroying other people's freedom because they say they have a family. I couldn't care less that you have a family, and no one else should either. When you're conducting evil, you're not only doing something that is completely immoral to other people, you're bringing down total enslavement on yourself and your own family. How could people say you're possibly doing anything good for them? It doesn't matter whether you're doing something that sustains their physical survival in the short term when you're destroying their freedom and ultimately their soul in the long term. People have to stop making excuses for these evil people. They are following the orders of the true psychopath ruling class, and in doing so, they're destroying freedom for everyone. I've done an entire presentation on the dynamics of order following and how it's always immoral. No matter what order you follow, it's immoral. Because you're abdicating your own personal responsibility to judge objective morality for yourself. And you're saying someone else can do that, and I'll just act unthinkingly, without judging whether it's right or wrong. We have to stop making excuses for these people. They are the most immoral people alive. This is true immorality. People want to talk about people taking substances or engaging in same-sex sex. I mean, you have to be kidding that this is what people still in the modern world, consensual behavior, they believe is immoral. Instead of people violating other people's rights and destroying freedom and removing the free will of other people. And believing there's some authority figure, that they're God, that they make laws. Now, or they follow the orders of people who claim that they're the lawmaker of the universe. Please. Get as offended as you like, people. The police and the military are the enemy. The police and the military are the people who are destroying freedom. Make no mistake about it. If you don't understand that dynamic, you're very ill-informed. And you're very, very naive. You're childishly naive. And the more people who make excuses for all the freedom-destroying order followers of our world, the more these order followers become further emboldened and will continue the immoral behaviors that they're currently conducting. They will be less likely to ever consider the immorality of their actions, the more excuses we make for them. I'm going to give a big example here, and I don't care who it offends, because this is what I see people saying within the freedom movement. Oh, these people, they have families to feed. Everybody has a family to feed in one way or another. They're nobody special, and that doesn't give them any special rights. Here's train loads full of people in boxcars and cattle cars being taken to their slaughter at a concentration camp in the Nazi regime in the late 1930s and early 1940s. Probably this picture is taken in the early 1940s, probably around 42, 43. And you have the conductor of the train taking them to their death, knowingly taking them to their death, and you have people within the Nazi SS killing squads waiting for them to arrive and take them in to wherever they're going to be gassed, whether it's going to be a mobile unit or a fixed gas chamber. Now, if you could go back in time, would you say to these two men right here in this picture to quit their jobs? Would you tell them to quit their jobs? Answer that question. Would it be right of you to tell them to quit their jobs? Would you make excuses for them? Would you say, oh, I understand you have a family to feed? Think about how silly that sounds. Think about how retarded and dumb that sounds. That you would go and say, oh, guys, I understand you got a family to feed, so you can't quit this job. I mean, that's literally what is happening today. It's just progressing at a slower rate. See, that's what was learned by the social engineers who really manipulated World War II and all of this. They learned that they can't do it that fast. They got to do it slowly in a stepwise progression over time so that the dumb people of the world don't catch on to what's happening to them. If they do it too fast, then they get resistance. But imagine people wouldn't tell these people to quit their job because they have families to feed. And yeah, it is that situation. People go, oh, it's not that situation. You're wrong. It is that situation. We're there already. We're there already. We're not going there. We're there. They just haven't completely pulled the trigger on the executions and the death that they really want to conduct. But the people who are actually building this total control system are cut from the same cloth as those Nazis standing there. And if you wouldn't tell those guys to quit their jobs, that's why the freedom movement is failing. You won't tell the police and military today to quit their jobs. You still believe they're somehow moral. Hey, this guy had a family to feed, right? Why wouldn't I make excuses for some high up member of the Gestapo or the SS? You know? He's got a family too. He's got the whole unit there. He's got the wife, he's got the son, he's got the dog. Well, why not just go back to the concentration camp and like why not just go back to the concentration camp and like let's get some more people gassed, you know? Let's do that. Why don't we? Would you tell this guy to quit his job even if it meant that his family would struggle? I absolutely would have the right to tell someone like that to quit their job and make their family struggle. Just like I have the right today to tell the police and military to quit their job and allow your family to struggle if that's the only means that they could currently be supported. They'll have to struggle for a while till you find some other means that is in right livelihood instead of wrong livelihood. We make excuses for evil, and then we wonder why more evil happens. And believe me, most people within this movement, they are bootlickers of the order followers, and they believe that they're necessary. You know how many people still within the so-called freedom movement I hear saying, well, we need police. Yeah, we need enslavement. We need our masters to whip us. We need to get out in the fields and pick whatever crop they want us to pick. We need to do their bidding. We need to follow their orders. Excuses for evil are not going to get it done. They're going to make it worse. And finally, the seventh reason why we're losing is people don't know how to get the message out. They don't know how to get the message of natural law, objective morality, truly choosing the right over the wrong, what the true right and wrong actually are, that they're objective and not subjective. Get the word out regarding the occult and the methods of manipulation that they do. And that's because they don't know technology. They don't know how to actually create media using technology. They're complete Luddites. They say, that's not for me, that's for someone else. I don't have the time, effort, money, motivation, whatever, age to learn. And they sit on the sidelines, not influencing. They sit on the sidelines cheering on, but not actually influencing others because they don't know what to do. They don't know where to begin in this field of endeavor. They don't know how to actually become a content creator themselves so that they can influence the minds of other people. To that end, I actually offer a course called How to Become the True Media yearly. This isn't an advertisement for that. I'm just saying that's my contribution to helping people who don't know how to get the message out. I show them how. I not only show them the governing dynamics and explore that with people in my work, but then half of the year I actually teach them the methodologies of how to get the message out. And that's what we all need to be learning and doing. The way that people are going to be influenced is through receiving media through the alternative forms of media on the internet. And unless people become a content creator and learn how to influence people in that regard, we're not making the aggregate dynamic any better. Watching from the sidelines isn't going to cut it. Wishing for it to be so isn't going to cut it. Learning the governing dynamics that you need to learn and then teaching them by creating media in the world so that many, many, many other people can be influenced by that media and learn the same things that you learn is the answer. That's the great work. So I think that's a good place to leave this short form presentation, because I think it very briefly but very highly accurately explains to people why the freedom movement isn't making any progress through these 7 basic dynamics and exploring them in brief here. Maybe at some point I'll do an extended version of this presentation to flesh out and explore these dynamics even more. Ultimately, it all comes down to doing the great work of first transforming your own mind and purging it of the mental viruses given to us by the social engineer ruling class. And then secondly, we have to broadcast those ideas out into the field of consciousness to influence other people through creative media that we get involved in making so that it spreads the message and eventually, hopefully, makes it go viral so that true human freedom can be manifested into our world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your kind attention today.
Make some noise for Mark Passio, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Did you guys get a feel for what I was saying earlier? Mark's got a loud, rough voice sometimes, but the message overall is what we've been saying. If we don't take action, we shouldn't expect any change, right? And I think mostly that Mark's message probably doesn't apply to those in this room because most of us are here because we know solutions are necessary. But in case you still got any doubt, hopefully Mark just kicked that out of your mind. Now I want to invite Rebecca and John Bush up here. with us, Rebecca Bush and John Bush, if we can find John, to the stage for us. And then we're going to get all of our speakers up here in just a moment. First off, we appreciate every single one of you for being here and everybody at home watching with us. We appreciate you. Can we get a round of applause for everybody who's been here? So much gratitude. I want to just name a few people. I want to thank Emma and Aaron for helping us with the social media. I want to thank our We Are Not Zombies crew, everybody here filming, making this look beautiful.
Jess, Nathan, and Myra for helping out as the volunteers.
All of the vendors, anyone who had anything to offer during the event, just, oh my God. And our sponsors online. And here we are, we've got John and Rebecca too. Come on, let's make some noise for John and Rebecca.
Woo! All right. So, we are so grateful again to each and every one of you. In summer 2020, the Great Reset was announced by the World Economic Forum. John and I were talking that summer, and does anybody remember that summer, how scary it was that time of year, like 2020? And just the fear, the lockdowns every new day. This country's doing this. They're putting boxes on kids' heads. They're doing this thing. Scary, scary stuff. And John and I, we started talking about, like, what are we going to do? You know, it doesn't feel good enough just to sit here and be on the computer complaining. You know, we got to do something. And both of our work has always been oriented to solutions, being proactive, being forward-thinking. And it was those conversations, I think around October, we really kind of came to the idea, like, we have to do something. And there was an event, summer 2020, called Event 202. Does anybody remember Event 201? 201? Well, there was an event called Event 202, which was basically a similar idea that we do here. They said, all right, well, if they simulated a mass pandemic, why don't we do a simulation of a better world? And so they invited me and a bunch of other speakers, and it was a single-day virtual event. But that kind of gave us this idea of, wow, what if we do counter them? Event 201, Event 202, the Great Reset, how about the Greater Reset? And that was really the initiative that we felt called to do, October 2020, and we really just threw it together. The first one happened within 2.5 months, I think we threw the event together. And we were lucky and blessed that 80 people showed up in Zihuatanejo, Mexico, maybe about the same in Texas, because
Texas was me in my office, solo.
for the first one. So that's kind of where we started. John started in his office. We started with 80 people in Ziwa. Who was there in Ziwa for one of the first two ones? A few of you guys. We appreciate all of you there. And we've grown. We've had hundreds of thousands of people tune into all 5 Greater Resets over the last 4 years. More than 27 countries tuning in. We've got mountains of messages of people just humbling all 5 of us saying, you've changed my life. I'm doing these things, and we couldn't be prouder to do this with all of you. And you know, when we started, it was activation, then expansion, then integration. How do we integrate the ideas? Co-creation. How do we keep co-creating? And here we are, manifestation. We mapped this out. We knew that we were going to do these 5, and we didn't know what came next. But now that we have sort of wrapped up that trajectory, John's got land, John and Becca have land, Miriam and I have land. We're working with the group. Hakeem's on the way as well.
I've got land online.
He's got a lot of projects. He's been guarding. We're all making progress in our goals is my point here. We're manifesting that which we started. And so we feel like we've kind of wrapped this up. And so there's not going to be any more Greater Resets. This is the end. We're really sorry. No, just joking. But no, there is going to be a change taking place. I'll share a little bit, and then I'll pass it around to whoever wants to share anything. Anybody want to say anything before I announce what we're going to do?
I am so grateful for y'all. Y'all are inspiring me here. So thank you. Thank you for joining us in person and in the live streams now. Thank you guys so much for all the work that y'all are doing, for joining us and inspiring all of us and the world around you. This is really all you guys.
All right. So starting next January 2025, there's going to be an event here. Same place, same location, Morelia. It's going to be called the People's Reset. As we start to move on, this is our movement. This is time for us to decide, the people, where this goes. And we recognize the world is wrong. That's why we still use that word reset. I think it triggers some people. Like, oh, why do we reset? I don't know about you guys, but we realized the world is not in a good shape, and we could do it better. So we want to reset, and we know the people are in charge. So next year, we want to invite you back to the People's Reset here in January 2025, Morelia, Mexico. And there's going to be some expansion. We might add a second stage. We're going to work on some things, and we want to take tips and suggestions from all of you of how to continue to improve this. And John, you want to share about what you guys have got on?
Yeah, so check. So, Harry, hold this. So, yeah, really excited. And this has been incredible to come down here to Mexico for this. I mean, look at all these freaking people. Absolutely incredible. And I want to echo what Miriam said. Like, we do this for you guys, and it's not easy. Although this time around was easier for Rebecca and I and our crew. Although I still got shout-outs and everything. Like, really, it was these guys that did everything, and we're just here to help amplify and echo and be a part of it. So super grateful to you guys. But it does take a lot out of us to do these events, the Exit and Build Land Summit, but it's the stories and the gratitude that you guys express and seeing everybody really be uplifted, empowered, and motivated that keeps us going. It's not easy, but this is what fills our cup more than anything. So we are going to, from our crew at Live Free Academy and the Central Texas crew, we're going to host another event in the future. It's not going to be at the same time. That had its own unique challenges, although it was super badass to have a simultaneous event. I was telling Derek, maybe we do that again in 2030 to kind of cap off all this work, right? But we're going to do another event likely next year in person. In the meantime, we're going to do smaller. It may only be virtual and in person, but it'll be like a symposium. And one of the things I was thinking about doing is like something just exclusively on alternative currencies, not just cryptocurrency, but some of the cool paper currencies we've been hearing about. And then like really getting deep into what is it with Bitcoin and how can we use cryptocurrency privately. So more so than a speaker communicating with the audience, we would bring on activists, entrepreneurs, influencers, innovators, and then they have a conversation together strategically about how can we overcome some of the challenges, what are you guys facing, all this, that, and the other. So that's some stuff like a mastermind, essentially. And we'll invite the public to watch and participate and ask questions as well. And then one thing we want to do is a weekly newsletter, once a week, covering each of the 5 topics. So health, mind, and body, the regenerative agriculture, agorism, counter economy, take back our tech, and community. So it'll be once a week, and it'll give some news, highlights from the community. We'll invite you guys to share your victories to help inspire people, tips, tactics, events, stuff that we're doing within our community, other people within the broader solutions-oriented movement. So yeah, we're really expanding and growing and keeping the dream alive. And like we shared, we couldn't do it without you guys. And I just want to shout out Derek, and I really think that the work that we've done cooperatively and everybody and Hakeem and everyone involved, we really like helped to spur a solutions movement. Yeah. And I think it was badly needed in a time of much despair and overwhelm. So thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of it.
I just want to call attention to the amount of effort and persistence that has gone over the past 3 years. I mean, I'd like to say that the Greater Reset created the solutions-focused genre. That type of event didn't exist before this one. So I want to give a big round of applause to Derek and for John for having 2 successful events in Mexico and in Texas. We're building bridges across countries. Thank you guys for keeping it up.
Give it up for Rebecca!
Okay, I'll just say that I love all of you, and thank you for being here. And it takes a village, it truly does. So I honor all of you. I honor all of you. What we've built together is beautiful, and hopefully this forking will allow us to have more and more activity and more engagement and more involvement throughout the year. Rather than one big event, we'll have kind of microdosing throughout the year, then the big event in January, and more momentum. Exactly. And more movement, because it's exciting to be at an event like this, but really it's all about the integration, over the year and throughout time, and doing different activities throughout the year, sprinkled here and there, I think will keep people constantly engaged. So I'm excited for that.
I want to take a moment to acknowledge you guys, all of our friends that came out here to Morelia. Because of you guys, we have met so many new Morelians out here that are already on the same vibe, that are already on the solutions focus, on building community, on eating organic, all the good stuff. So my goal this year is to bring more people together here in Morelia locally, and it's all because of you guys. Y'all have inspired that. So thank you for the connections. Y gracias a todos morelianos, todos nuestros nuevos amigos, vecinos aquí en Morelia y en México, en todas partes de México, que se han unido a nosotros. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Este evento es para ustedes, es para nosotros, es para todo el mundo. Y gran parte de este evento en Morelia, específicamente, es para invitarlos a ustedes. Entonces, sin ustedes, este evento no sería creciendo aquí en México. Y me da tanta emoción de crecer juntos con ustedes, con mis vecinos y a ver qué podemos hacer este próximo año tomando acción y empoderando nuestras comunidades juntos. Muchas gracias.
And you know, something that I want to play up as well, because these events are kind of like a pep rally. Remember in school we'd have a pep rally before the big game. The real work is when everybody goes back home to implement what they've learned. But one thing I'm excited to play up is this whole Texas-Mexico connection that we've been talking about. So establishing relationships, like establishing literal trade routes, inviting people to move down to Mexico, inviting people to move to Central Texas, and growing the in real life relationships and connections that can help build the resiliency that we're all going to need as things get crazy. And let me try to say it in Spanish. Una cosa muy importante que este movimiento es la conexión de la gente en Texas y la gente en México con negocios y conexiones y todo. So, muchas gracias.
I want to know who thinks we can pack this entire auditorium next year.
This room can hold 800 people, by the way.
We're going to need to make more room. And it's not just about the quantity of people, it's about the quality, and this is the level we want. So you guys have the heart. I love y'all.
All right, one last thing before we invite all our speakers on stage, just another little aspect to this change. Again, next year, here, same time, the People's Reset, and future events in Texas. We're at regular weekly, monthly, virtual events. Sign up at thegreaterreset.org or freedomcells.org. But also, we know so many of you are craving something in the middle of the year to reconnect, and we're working on it, so stay tuned. All right, all of our speakers come on stage. Everybody who spoke on this stage would like to invite you for a photo, for a final goodbye before we do our closing ceremony. Everybody get up here. Make a big round of applause for all of our speakers, everyone. Come on up, all you beautiful people. Oliver, everybody who presented, who had a part to play. Come on up here. Yeah. Come on up, everybody. Everybody who's a speaker, presenter. Susanna, come on in. Come on. Yes, get all these beautiful people in here. Make some noise for everybody here. We want you on the stage next year. Come on in, Dan, get in here. Keep coming. We got 45 people. Nobody jump on the stage. Let's move up a little bit, we can. All right. All right, we come on in, keep packing in. We got some more room in here.
Come on.
Is that
now.
everybody? We got Arisha, everybody who performed music. If you spoke, we want you on stage. Get a final big picture. Elias Clay, of course, Soul Disciple, get in here. Presents, all of our beautiful performers. They're going to be playing here tonight for the concert. Thank you so much. Come on, get in here, Madre. All right, is that everybody? Any other presenters? Yep, come on, Lucas. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you. Give a big round of applause to everybody who presented and shared their knowledge with you this year. We're very, very grateful to all of you. Can we howl together? All right, all right. Where's my brother Yoshi at? Yoshi, would you like to begin the... If you guys can all stay with us, we're going to start to close things out as we started with an opening. On stage or off stage? You can stay. Thank you, everyone.
Vamos a cerrar los ojos.
We're going to close our eyes.
Sentir nuestro corazón.
We're going to feel our heart.
Todo lo que se ha movido, todo lo que se ha cuajado, fermentado.
Everything that has been moved, that has been getting solid.
Y desde ese centro de poder,
And from that center of power,
agradecemos a este territorio, México, Morelia.
we're going to thank this territory, Mexico, Morelia.
Gracias a este teatro, Morelos, a todos sus trabajadores, todas las personas que estuvieron al servicio.
Thank you to Teatro Morelos and everybody that works here to be of service.
Vamos a recordar todo lo que aprendimos, todo lo que vivimos, las personas con las que conectamos, las guardamos ahí en el corazón.
Everything that we learned, everything that we have connected, everyone we have met, we're gonna keep it in our heart.
Nos reconocemos como parte de ese gran todo y desde esa unidad tomamos nuestro poder.
We recognize ourselves as everything of the whole, and from there we take our power.
Para que todas esas ideas, todo el conocimiento se vuelva materia, se vuelva acción, se vuelvan hechos.
For all those ideas, those visions, for it to be material and to manifest.
Gracias a cada uno de ustedes por abrir su mente, por recibir todo esto.
Each and every one of you for opening your mind to welcome everything that happened during this time.
Y con los pies bien sentados, bien sembrados en la tierra,
And with your feet very well planted in this earth,
vamos a respirar desde la planta de los pies.
we're gonna breathe, letting it come from our feet.
Inhalamos.
Inhale.
Sostén
Hold.
y suelta.
Release.
Otra vez siente la energía de la tierra que sube.
Again, feeling the energy of earth. Let it go up. Another inhale.
Corazón, conciencia.
Feeling the heart. Hold and release.
Y ahora con mucha más atención vamos a coger esa energía de la tierra, la vamos a ascender al corazón y con las manos la elevamos al cielo.
With more attention, we're going to grab all this energy from Mother Earth with our inhale, and we're going to open our hands to the sky.
Inhalo.
And inhale, coming through all your body, through your heart, to your hands.
De arriba.
Release.
Y vamos a sellar este encuentro con un gran aullido, porque es la unión de la vocal abierta con la cerrada, en un aú profundo hacia arriba, sintiéndonos tribu, sintiéndonos comunidad, unidad. Vamos a gritar ¡aú! Oh, meteo, ay, 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 ajo. Y decirles que hemos cumplido la profecía de la unión del cóndor con el águila. Estamos uniendo a toda América, también uniendo a todo el planeta gracias aquí a este evento.
With this type of event here, we are manifesting the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, uniting north with the south, in which we are here to empower ourselves and to create what we want to create.
Sí, que siempre tengamos esa fuerza para ser agentes de cambio, guardianes de la tierra, de los ríos, de los árboles. Solo nosotros podemos hacerlo y
For
que
us.
lleguemos a las familias, a las comunidades.
For us to realize and make sure that we remember we those agents of change, for us to be here and to manifest we want to manifest.
Y como nos gusta sentirnos un poco más cerquita, más en confianza, vamos a abrir el espacio.
All right, so we prepared something for today. You want to say something before we do that? Actually, it's raining. It's raining. I have an idea. The idea is that we prepared a group chant. It's amazingly beautiful. You're going to enjoy it. It's very healing as well. We prepare for outside, but it's kind of raining, but we can make it happen here. We have an idea. It's kind of like it's a community work. So we kind of move and bring the chairs all the way to the walls, and we do this amazing, beautiful dance together. Are we cool with that? Derek? Are we cool with that?
Everybody stay where you are real quick. I will remind you we have a concert in here at 7 p.m., so we will be getting ready for that. Last thing I want to say on the stream before we do that. Brother Dan and I, we're going to bring the Greater Reset to Europe, the People's Reset to Europe as well. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here with us. The Greater Reset 5 Manifestation. Thank you, everybody at home, for being with us. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next year.